What's up, y'all? Thanks for joining me for this episode of the Hip Hop Humboldt Podcast. I am blessed to be in the studio this time. Always, I'm always blessed to be with some legends. Again, we got Mr. Brian Swislow co-hosting. How you doing, Mr. Swislow?
What's happening? It's good to be here.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, dig it.
And the guest for this episode, Humboldt County legend. He's been doing a lot for Northern California music for a long time. We got Hap Hathaway.
Honored to be here, brother. Appreciate you, man.
Hey, the honor's all mine, man. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon, coming in and giving your stories to the community. So a lot of this is one of my goals is to bridge the gap between generations, right? And so I know that there's a lot of younger artists and people in the community that are listening to the podcast. And so I want to make sure that they know about the people that have been laying the foundation for this scene for literally over 30 years, And so
this is coded language that we're old.
it moved. Nobody's getting any younger. Let me tell you that. We're all going in that direction.
I appreciate what you're doing. I think it's super critical to document stuff because scenes move on, works get forgotten, people disappear, and it's really good to stay solid with your roots. Even, you don't have to know the people, but you need to sort of know of them and have a relationship with them, even if you never met them or if they passed away already or whatever,
It's something especially important for this scene with, again, newer artists, in the scene, coming up. I feel it's important that people learn to network and show love to the people that have been doing it out here. Like you're going to make your own lane. Everybody has their own art. You're going to do what you're going to do. But you have to show love to the people that have been doing it because there's somebody that paved that lane that you're walking on, So, and you've been doing it, Hap. So, I'd love to get into the history of, the different things you've been doing for Southern Humboldt County and outside the county too. You know what I mean? I'd love to get into all of it. And so...
Well, I'd like to say first, again, I'm really honored to be here because, I'm not Humboldt native. I don't even live out here. I just have a lot of friends and family and have, years of experience with blowing it out with the homies, you know what I mean? Like we just have put in a lot of work over the years. So to be included as a legend, quote unquote, amongst the royalty of the Humboldt scene is a blessing to me. And I think that the knowledge of your heritage, I keep just flashing on that piece that you had. Where was that? Was that the Jam? We had that tree piece. It was like this tree mural that in the roots of it all was like the oldest bands that had been in live venues like at all in Humboldt, pretty much all the way up through the whole thing, through the reggae era. And all, you know what I mean? It was, that was dope.
That's dope. Yeah. Was that Julia's?
Yeah, Julia did the painting. I had the concept. The idea, so when I was a really young boy, my father gave me this piece of art, and it was the American Tree of Rock and Roll. They have one British, they have all different ones now. And I was super young, and my dad got one of these to me. I gave one for my birthday, and on the top of it, in 1983 or 4, it had my name added to it. And it was like in calligraphy. It was super cool, and I was like 13, 12 or 13. I was like, hell yeah. And then that inspired me to think about, wow, it would be really cool to have the living tree of Humboldt music, something that we can document all of the music that happened long before us. And and timelines are hard to specify, you know what I mean? It's really hard to put everything in an order, but I went down the rabbit hole, and I found people like Paul DeMarc and Bob Doran, and there's a handful of elders, in the community now that when I first moved here were, around my age, and they were holding it down. Bob still is, Paul's still playing, they're still out there, you know what I mean? And they're a big part of the music before I ever moved here. So before I lived here, I can't say much other than reaching out to these cats. And so we painted a tree, Julia painted the tree and started the names at the bottom. 1973 were the roots of the tree, the first people who owned the jambalaya. And
wow.
Yeah, and they had their names and all of them, and then it went up from the 70s through the 80s to the 90s, and I really tried to get it. I really tried really hard. I'm sure I missed somebody. There's always a name miss. It's difficult. It's not an easy task to to spend that kind of time doing that for someone like me who didn't grow up here. You know what I mean? I live here, but I'm not a native to Humboldt, and so I had to really dig deep.
You put in work for the community, man. Yeah, like you've been doing.
Yeah, right on.
That's so cool that you brought that art up, Hap. I mean, that's the kind of thing that's going to be memorable for people, you know? Like, I'm sure there's other people in the community right now that'll be listening. They're like, oh, yeah, that was it.
And them names, these old cats that he just named off right now, their grandsons listening right now, like, yo, that's, you know what I mean? Like, dude, yeah. So for myself, the way that I landed out here was originally was, of course, around the cannabis, you know what I mean? This was like late 90s, and the medical thing was just barely getting started. And honestly, some of the first cats that were actually putting out like full Sunner Gardens and really actually doing that, I seen some of the first ones, you know what I mean? In that era, in the return of them, like in the old days, like the Back to Landers, they were doing that back then, but then it went away because the camp and all that was crazy. But so that's how I actually originally came out here, like a lot of people, and started building relationships. But my whole goal, even being in that world, was to just be able to access music, access gear, and access the time that it takes to be able to be a dope artist, or try to be a dope artist. You have to the amount of time that goes into it. A lot of people in the public have no idea what it takes to adjust your life around trying to be dope at some kind of art like that on that level. So I want to say it was about 2006 or 2007. We were in the MySpace era, and Serato, the DJ program, Serato was really new, maybe been out for a year or two at that time. That technology to be able to just like not have to do CDJs, but have actual vinyl control aesthetic in your performance, but your library is your laptop, like that, dude, that shit changed everything in such a crazy way, good and bad. But for those of us that in that era, we were still like to do real hip hop and what we thought was real hip hop, we had to press our instrumentals onto vinyl, you know what I mean? And to a record that you could scratch with and not destroy real quick had to be wide groove. So you'd only get 15 minutes of material per side. So you could get like 30 minutes of instrumentals, scratches, samples, things like that. You know what I mean? It was around $1,000, back then, to get the plates made and 100 copies. And then you'd have your own records so you could drop your beats with records, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So when Serato happened, like those of us who were that serious about it and trying to do it that way were like, oh yeah.
That's a complete game changer. Yeah.
Crazy. We could scratch with anything that it was ever recorded. But but it changed the business a lot too, and I'm on MySpace and I'm just scrolling, and I'm in a band in the Chico area, which is where I'm from. I'm from Chico, I'm from Fresno originally, and then ended up landing in Chico area and into the foothills around there. And then it's been, that area and Humboldt. Concow is actually the area where I stay at. So I'm on the MySpace just trying to push our little project, and I come across Jose. Shout out LCA, Casey, Jimbo, Jose.
Yeah.
I come across Jose, and he's like, yeah, we're looking for a DJ, and I've got Serato now. So I'm like, yo, I could be anybody's DJ. Like that at that moment, it dawned on me. I was like, fuck, I could be these guys' DJ. So I check out their music, and I'm like, okay. And I hit him up like, hey, I've got this software, I could basically show up and look like I got your music on these records, and it's super dope, And he was like, well, we're at about this level with our group. So, this is our kind of our pay we're averaging. So we really couldn't pay you to come out, but maybe we could set up a show and you could bring your crew out. And I'm like, okay, now we're talking. So then that connects us to Ole Pearson, Diamondback family, which is, that's my squad now, but that was the first connection at the Red Fox before your Red Fox era, right?
Totally.
And
Beginnings.
So Ole had a show with LCA and us. We're on there opening the Resonators, 4-Star Bravado, and Moonshine Bandits, who were like just really starting to blow up at that time, And so we did that show, and then I don't know. I mean, the rest is history, as they say. I started, I got a sound system. Ole started hiring me to do sound guys, and then we would get to open on shows too. When it was like, oh, well, our shit fits with them headliners, we could open on that show. So a lot of shows that way. Diamondback threw some ragers over the years, you know. So can't give enough props to OEP. He's really the reason why I had built so many relationships out here, because he kept bringing me back out for shows, and then you connect with other people, and that's more shows. So that's how I kind of ended up out here, and that's my Humboldt family tree musically, really like that.
That's dope though. That's definitely roots though, and big time shout out to Oli. Yeah, no. I think Oli, I was talking to Oli, I think, you know, there's really something to, you know, keeping what you've done at word of mouth, you know what I mean? And so I hope one day to get Oli on, but even if not, anybody that knows what's happened with Humboldt County hip hop and just a lot of shows over the years, period, around here knows Oli. So big shout out to him for what he's done for the scene and the culture.
Shout out.
Not many who've done what he's done. I mean, you know, he's up there where there's just ain't that many people that put that much of their life into trying to make sure there was dope art coming through here, especially with hip hop and stuff. A lot of reggae, a lot of other artists that other promoters been driving through for a long time, but like for the hip hop world, like, yeah, nobody really repped it like Oli. You know, and Big Daddy, you know, he did a lot of shows. Shout out Big Daddy. Because he embraced me too. That's how I connected with Highway when Highway was just barely getting going, man. I just remember him as a little dude come out, like his energy, even when he first started, we were like, oh, like, damn, he just had that fire, you know what I mean? Like, man, he's gonna get it.
And he still got that fire.
He does, yeah. And it's more intense than ever because he's so matured now, and his craft is so much. You know, when you watch him go, you're like, it's like some people just look like and feel like they're just built for it. You know what I mean? So when you see them, they give you a certain kind of like, you know, tingle or whatever. And a lot of other, it's like, I don't mean no disrespect to any artist at whatever level they're at. I'm only at my own little corny level, you know what I mean? But when that, whatever that is that you access, when you can aim that fire right, you know what I mean? Like you give it to other people, you put it into other people. And it's, I mean, I know Swizz knows that's really like what I think we're addicted to as artists, why we're driven to keep trying to make art that people think is dope, because that connection right there. And you can't really, it took me honestly a long time. I've been trying to rap forever. You know, I started seriously trying to be an MC when in like 96 or 97. And I'll be honest, I think it took like 10 years probably of really trying to do it before I started really making songs where I was like, all right, okay, this is working now. And having a presence on stage, being able to like actually not just be all awkward and weird on stage with that, you know what I mean? Like it took me a long time, and I don't know why I stuck with it. Honestly, when I look back,
I
look at older shit where I'm just like, man, because I was not really like, but some people like Lil Highway is just a natural come out. And now, you know what I mean? Like just this whole thing, everything about him is bigger and doper and stronger. You know what I mean? Yeah.
He's consistently growing out here, which is not easy to do.
No.
You know what I mean? A lot of people they're finding they don't realize where they can grow, so they set their own ceiling. You know what I mean? And that happens a lot, you know.
And other people too, and this isn't just in music or art, but like just humans in general, that like crab in a barrel stuff, whatever our little insecurity thing is, and you just start getting uncomfortable when somebody else is getting it. Like you have to fight against that to be a grown ass person, you know what I mean? And it's some people it's easier for than others, but you know, when you start getting it and other people that really think they should have it and why do you got it, and you know, that starts messing shit up too, and it's almost unavoidable, but you know, we get through it.
Yep. No, it definitely, it's so
or
interesting.
You don't, and you fail and you quit or whatever, you know.
Right, that happens too. No, it's so interesting. I just had a recording earlier with some of the dancers from the Arcane Artists, the Vagabond dancers, and so they were talking about the same thing. You know, it's so interesting with art. You guys are always going to have people, whether it's bravery from the alcohol at shows or not, people that are going to think like, oh, they're like the best dancers, or they're going to go up to, you know, the MCs and be like, oh, I could do that too and everything like that.
He's
but
right.
no, yeah, right, do that kind of energy all the time, right? But the people don't realize what it takes to actually get up on a stage and the stamina involved with it. The stamina involved with doing like what Knack One does at the Fat Bowl Cypher for 3 hours. You know what I mean? The lungs involved with that. I couldn't even do it for 20 minutes. You know? So there's a lot that goes into what you guys do that people will think, you know, there should be, you know, it's so easy to think you're a hobbyist and try to move yourself forward away from that. Like, no, I'm so good. I'm not just a hobbyist. You got to really acknowledge yourself as, no, I'm just a hobbyist until you've actually put the time, dedication into the craft, worked, networked, built your, like there's all, Swizzlow talked about that on the episode with Jay the Sarge. It's not just being the best musician.
10,000 hours, first of all.
That's it.
For anything.
Exactly.
It's like until you've put in 10,000 hours, it's
You're
really
right.
hard to, it's just like in, the analogy of age, you know what I mean? It's like, 15, 16-year-olds are like, yeah, I can do whatever I want. It's like, well, kind of, and it's like 2021, it's like, yeah, well, fuck that. It's like, well, kind of. 25, it's like, all right, I'm starting to get it. It's like, well, kind of, once until you get in your 30s, it's like, okay, I'm starting to get it. You know what I mean? And that's just, and it's hard. And people do, there are the older souls or whatever, what's the word I'm looking for? More quickly evolved, if kids come from a home where they're really getting that old soul mentality, so all due respect to young people who are way ahead of my own bandmates in Object Heavy, you know what I mean? They're, significantly younger than me and you would never know, So, but
Heck
anyway,
yeah.
I digress.
No, but it's out there though. There's all people engaging in the art at different levels, and hip hop now is this interesting thing where it's gone international. It's an internationally recognized art, and it really is in almost every corner of the globe. You can just kind of get your own little recording setup, maybe whatever not keyboard, but just drum kit, little controller that you want. Yeah. You know what I mean, and start making some hip hop, but. You have to, I feel there's an important part of it is delineating yourself. Are you a hobbyist or are you doing more than that? And if you're doing more than that, you do have to realize that there's a lot of work involved. Like you said, the 10,000 hours. There's very few prodigies. You know what I mean? Yeah. There's people out there that do have the talent in them, and it takes time to cultivate that. You know what I mean? And so it's going to take time. Like, people aren't just going to hop on the scene and be the best and go up there and try to challenge the best. You know what I mean? You can't do that.
And it's good to have the confidence to do that, but it also takes the humility to get knocked down and get back up. The ones who get back up, then all right, you just clocked some hours.
Exactly.
So, and that's what, when it comes to being the best, truly subjective, you know what I mean? And it's voted for. However that turns out, there's always a way that someone will think something's the best, but it's not, when we're voted best musician, right? Like I was this year, and it's like cool. And being the best, it's not like I'm the best keyboardist. I'm not the best keyboardist. I'm not the best piano player.
I think it's like he was saying, it's there's so much more to it than musicianship, because you're public relations dude, you're an entrepreneur and have driven economy, and you know what I mean? Like, you have all these other facets to yourself. And man, I don't mean to disrespect any musicians, but I know some people that are like absolutely phenomenal, like prodigal level with their stuff. And they're super singular with it, and nobody could do it better than them. But their other aspects of their life are out of balance usually, you know what I mean? And unless they've plugged that music in to make sure that they're eating off of it, it's hard to make a life around that. So to have that multifaceted thing makes you a more valuable musician, regardless of your playing. Yeah. I think that's what they're trying to big up you on.
Yeah, that kind of recognition, I would take that. I think that's important for people.
Not to say you ain't dope, because you're dope.
No.
But I appreciate you're dope on other levels than that too.
But yeah, I mean, up until recently, I booked the gigs. I do the management. I do the booking now. With Object Heavy, we have a pretty solid team. Everybody does something. You know what I mean? That's significant. And so we're partly why it's working. But yeah, it's really important to be able to handle all of these things and last in a young person's game, you know what I mean? So I take it a different kind of serious, you know what I mean? So I like knowing what I like knowing now what people, I used to not care what other people thought, or it's like we care on a level, but as far as me putting out my music and repping Humboldt Weed in 1999 and 2000 and 2002 with Garth, and just being like, this is happening whether you like it or not. And
here we are.
I was not afraid of that ever. You know what I mean? And here we are. I just left the Crisp Lounge and played 3 hours of music sitting with my keyboard up next to the bar where there were dab rigs and bongs that people could use, and I'm smoking weed. I know that's been a thing, like you say, in Europe and in Canada, whatever not, but it's happening right now in California because I just witnessed it today. You know what I mean?
Yep. Just came from it. Heck yeah.
Anyway,
no, shout out to the Crisp Lounge for putting on the shows by the homie Knack One. And like you were saying earlier, we were talking about the Crisp Lounge. They're doing all kinds of things. It's a good thing in Humboldt County. It's good progress. People have always wanted spots like that. Shout out to the Eco Can Lounge too, But we need more places where we can congregate, just relax, enjoy cannabis. You know what I mean? Like that. It's been the opposite, right? You have to be at home. You have to be, you know what I mean, and everything like that. This is going to draw a lot of people, as we've seen at the Crisps. So,
yeah.
Heck yeah.
Dig it. 10,000 hours.
That's it. That's it. That's why you're out there with Hotfoot. That was Hotfoot and you guys was over there,
Yeah.
Heck yeah. No, I'm just glad to see the Crisp taken to hip hop as well. It was a natural symbiosis, right? Cannabis and hip hop. You know what I mean? So shout out to the homie Rock Slang who just did a show last night down at the Crisp, I
drove by and saw the place was cracking, so it's good.
Heck yeah.
Good.
And that place just opened, so we're going to see a lot more out of that, and I'm just really stoked to see hip hop in Humboldt County have a lot of growth. I think whether it's just podcasts and other people moving their brands forward in Humboldt County in the scene, seems like there's been a lot of progress. There's been a lot of networking that's happened. People are kind of seeing what's going on now, with more visibility to it. And so that's been really good, Without that, I feel like it's just kind of, there's a lot of clicks and people clicked up, you know what I mean? There's always going to be that. But at least with some more exposure, it's not like people are like fighting over absolute crumbs,
Mm-hmm.
And that's not to say that, the local media is crumbs. It's just that I feel that there's a lot of hip hop artists in Humboldt County, and there could be a lot more exposure out there, And so I really, honestly, I'm the type that, I'm doing this podcast and everything like that, but I want to give a quick shout out to the How Rude podcast, any hip hop, if you're out there doing, and shout out to the Nada crew, that was, Lance and the boys, on Rude and everything like that. They were doing a podcast for a while there too. Shout out to anybody doing that, because podcasts are like the new news. It's how people are tuning in, tapping into what's going on. And so around here, I know that there's, whether it's the artists that are making hip hop in Humboldt County to their fans, people are listening. And so we need more people out there making, I've heard ideas for podcasts. I bet Swizz could hop on another 2 or 3 podcasts and make those podcasts people really tune in. You know what I mean? Shout out to Steve Geeter and the Into the Cannabis podcast. You know what I mean? Shout out to King Pounds and Puffin with Pounds. Right. You know what I mean? We need more of all that. That's people able to tap into what's happening on the culture and the scene, Right now there's just, the Lost Coast Outpost, Kim Kemp, Mad Rivers, got a few things, whether it's the paper and the website, you know what I mean? But there's so much art that happens around here, and media and marketing are 2 places where there's a real need. So anybody that's got ideas for podcasts, shout out, Juice down at the Juice Box. You go record your podcast down there, and he's going to give you like top quality audio out of that space. You know what I mean? And he's recording music artists down there. There's been with the Hip Hop Humboldt podcast kind of growing in awareness, people growing that it's out there, and the hip hop scene is moving, has been constantly moving, right? People are now aware that there's been people recording at the Juice Box, and so he's getting a lot. It's a hub. Shout out to the Epitome Gallery, who's been a hub for the last 2 years for the Fat Bowl ciphers, for a lot of different shows, live art. You know what I mean? We need more of that. People embracing hip hop. Venues, business owners, you know what I mean? Fat Bowl has paved the way for the culture for almost 30 years, you know what I mean? And so shout out to what Fat Bowl has done for the community. We need more people embracing the culture like Fat Bowl has done, you know? So, but I'm just glad you brought up people like Highway, because Highway's doing it out there. You know what I mean? I know that you've worked with a lot of people over the past. You know, feel free to get into any other stories about some heads you've worked with. You know?
Well, I would be remiss to let this podcast proceed without mentioning the one and only Big OEB.
Yeah.
You know, at one point, riding with Ole and riding with Diamondback, I connected with Mr. Spears, and man, you know, he's that's a good dude right there. That, you know, and a lot of these people have just become dear friends and family. Like, but you know, we've had some pretty wild rock and roll adventures, me and that fella, and the way that I met him was the Ocean Grove spot over there. You know what I'm talking about? Ole would do shows at that spot, and I mean, that was some humble shit. You know what I mean? Shows at that spot with the redwoods and the cabins and the ocean, and it's like, dude, that's humble. And like full on sound system lights, like a concert, like just shoved cup. Into this little, you know what I mean?
Secret cup.
Yeah, stuff. That was yep. That might have been the one. It was one of those jams at the Ocean Grove spot. OEB was on the bill performing, and I was like, I wasn't doing sound. I was DJ. I was like house DJ for the night and kind of like host. And I was backing DJ, thanks Serato, to OEB and a couple of the other guys. And so OEB comes out, starts the set. I've never met him. I've literally never met him. But Ole told me, he's like, oh, you guys will click, you know, and he's dope. I know you like his music. And so I'm like, we literally like met on the stage, basically, you know what I mean? And he starts, I'm going track to track, just dropping them basic style, starting at the top. He's doing his songs. And there's one point where it's like, I never heard the song before, but sometimes you could just tell. And he had just made the smallest mistake. James, don't be mad at me. It's just a good story, bro. But this is kind of how we clicked. You know, he something happened where he got off with his lyrics, and I could tell. So I just said, like wheeled up on it, you know what I mean? And it gave him this bridge to like play off. And he's like, yeah, hold up real quick. Let me say something. You know what I mean? And then he was like, all right, DJ, let's get back to it. Drop that shit. You know what I mean? Yeah, and it was like, I just instinctively I didn't know for sure. I was like, was that a fuck up? I think he fucked up. You know what? Fuck. And it all worked, and it was smooth, and you know what I mean? And that was like, that's kind of some hip hop shit right there to do in that moment.
I mean, that's inevitable, you know. I mean, just from being in the band, you know what I mean? It's when someone fucks up. I mean, there's moments where, just in your defense of your statement of OEB making a mistake, and it's like, man, it's guaranteed it's going to happen at some point, and it's how you get out of it is how it happens. And what came out of that was a real connection.
Yeah,
so that was cool.
Yeah. We talked about it later. He was like, yo, man, you read that perfectly, bro. That was what's up. And so we kind of like connected like that. And then so Ole continued to book shows like that. And then eventually OEB really pushed his own thing. He had the spot over there for a while from before Thickman, rest in peace, Garrett Thickman.
Yeah, rest in peace.
Running that spot over there. So, dude, so much Humboldt hip hop culture through that building. That place is like a shrine for so much, you know, for older cats is like, but without stuff like this, where we get to kind of document it and preserve it, you know, then it's like it never happened. It's like a dream, you know what I mean? It never even happened. But yeah. So,
what building were you talking about?
The Red Fox. The Red Fox building. Oh, because it was the Red Fox.
Before that.
Yeah, see, Red Fox was the first time I ever landed there. Yeah. But that was before you were running it over there.
Totally.
And then.
But I was at that show at the Moonshine Bandits because I showed up with Eli and Garth, and we were kicking it super tough.
No way.
I kicked it hard over there anyway. Yeah. We were super down with LCA because we were still, you know, everyone's doing shows on and off. So
oh, hell yeah.
We supported. We were always supported hard. I lived in Cutton at that point, so it was right around the way. Yeah, we were definitely coming out to Ole's shows. You know, we were always supporting.
Damn. So Ole was doing the shows way back. Oh, man. Yeah. Heck yeah.
But way before that was like the Summer Jam joints out there, which I never went to any of those, but that was like legendary. I've been hearing stories of those for years.
That was when Potluck, Potluck, Freestyle Kings. And that was early on, man.
Yeah, shout out Potluck, shout out Freestyle Kings, Big Garth. Man.
Hey, that
We've been out here
reminds
for
me.
a while, Swizz. We've been out here, man.
You
Shit.
guys have been holding it down. No, this is so cool to hear some of these stories, man. Even before you owned the Red Fox, you know.
Oh
what I mean?
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
that's-
Because the Red Fox was happening for I don't know how many years exactly, but a few years easily. Because I didn't really get involved until the last 3 years, until 2009, 10-ish area. So there was the 7, 8, 6, 7, 8, 9, 8, 9 area. I think
Yep.
I know. I don't want to speak ignorantly, so yeah, I don't know. Around that time though, there were a few years before, and my homies, Rick, and there were guys. We played there, we played there with all the different groups. Also, Subsat played there all the time.
Oh, nice.
It was a home for hip hop for sure.
Heck yeah.
And then when I got in there, and it was just pushed it even harder. You know what I mean? It was just it was great because only everyone's just bringing shows through, and so I actually got to be part of making sure the bar ran straight. And I was really invested in the Adam was doing sound at that point. Adam Fishley was a fantastic sound guy.
Yeah, shout out to Adam. Yeah.
Really good crew. So I got lucky with that.
That's what's up. Damn, even Adam's been doing sound around here for a long time. That's why he's a pro.
Yeah. I met him through the Red Fox. When you take it all the way back to before my time, like when you think about Potluck, they were spinning, they were doing, and I don't know the story because this was before my time. I just know what James or something, I would hear from Adam is, so El Jefe had Jefes, and they were holding that place down. They were DJs, and I think that might be how they connected along the way. And
That was wild.
so there was a whole thing happening with their crew, and then and it evolved from there. And there was Manifest, there was Lakota, some other MCs before our time that really, it was just what came public. Potluck, Freestyle Kings, and Jose, and just people just
Now the Jefe,
Blasted
is that the Jefe that was with LCA?
El Jefe from NoFX.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. He played guitar in the Freestyle Kings for a short period. We all vibed on that. He would play guitar with us, and he was a really great horn player too. Trumpet player. And but he got super tight at some point. Maybe it was when they were DJing at his club, and those guys got super tight and launched a pretty awesome music career. They paved the way.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, which
Yeah.
they did a huge thing for Humboldt hip hop.
It's and right now it's so good to see the legends, the OGs, still holding the torch. You know what I mean? We got, just for instance, shout out to the homie Case from LCA.
Yes,
you know
sir.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Back on the scene. You know what I mean? Hitting
fresh.
up all the events.
Fresh tracks with Eli, right?
About to drop. Shout out to Eli and Case doing that. I can't wait for that one because how we do this is probably one of my favorite Humboldt County hip hop albums, and so I'm really waiting for this one. And then I also heard too, just on the grapevine, you know what I mean, that Case is doing some work with Highway. Well, we've already seen the visuals that Case and Highway have done. Shout out to Case and Highway on that Sweet Solitude music video for Highway. That was clean. But I think there's some more on the way that Case and Highway are doing too. So it's just really good to see, and somebody that's talented like Case too, you know what I mean, with that in him. He's got the culture, the art, the talent in him, you know what I mean? So it's so good to see him back, exchanging, doing those exchanges with the community like you guys are talking about. That's what, that exchange between people when you're on the stage and the audience, and that exchange of energy is what it's really about,
Yeah. Casey, big shout out Case, man. He's a student of hip hop for sure. And he's like super non-biased with it. Like he's really versed in everything. Myself, I'm a little eccentric. And so there's like certain pockets that I've explored very deeply and other pockets that I really haven't really gotten very into over the years. Tons of music that I just missed, but Case knows everything all the way back. Like he knows every record because he was just a fan that way and a kind of a collector and a documentarian that way. And so once someone like that crosses over from being like a super fan into an actual creator of the art form, of the form, then it's usually something pretty special, and so the way that he samples stuff and his like tastefulness with how things are arranged and his ear for the detail for arrangements comes from being that student that way, you know what I mean? So
You could hear that in his style.
yeah. Yeah, he's super original and super cool, like humble dude. You know, and when you kick it with him, he's just like really, really one of the homies, and he's one of the most talented dudes around working that angle. You know, for a long time. And you know, I don't mean this in a bad way, but I keep in touch with him, and there's been a while where he was like pretty sure he wasn't going to be doing this stuff. You know what I mean? I hope I'm not putting him out there in a weird way. I think he talked about it when he was on here. I watched that one, you know, but to know that he's being creative again is really good, because just you like to see your friends healthy and happy in that way. And also for what it's like, he put all that his 10,000 hours is in. And then if it's just sitting over here in the lab, like in a box, you know what I mean? While he goes on with his life, it's like, oh, you know, so to see it coming back out and him enjoying it is very good. It's very good.
It's especially important for this culture, with it being a small community, you know what I mean? And somebody with the experience that Case has, you know what I mean? I definitely agree that and that's one of the things too, that's all the more reason to come out to the Fat Bowl Cypher. That's all the more reason to come out to any of these Humboldt County hip hop events, because Case is out there. Let me tell you what, he's outdoing me at these events now. He's going out to more than I am. He's going out to almost every single Humboldt County hip hop event. So shout out to Case, and go out there and network with him. These young artists that are out there, y'all need to, you guys need to talk to Case, because we know about these videographers around here, but y'all don't know Case. Go shout out Case, because I'm telling you, that work he did with Highway, that was pro level, that was industry level.
Yeah, he don't mess around. He'll get into something and learn it. You know what I mean? He's intelligent like that.
All while managing a family and everything. You know,
it ain't easy. That part of it, like being able to be on that level successfully on the side of doing a good job of living your life, being a dad, being a brother, being a husband, whatever, you know, it's not easy.
Yeah.
And one thing, you know, that I've really noticed over the years of being in this stuff that is pretty unfortunate is that most of the people that I've gotten lucky enough to be around and work, like people that I kind of grew up and came up idolizing and then end up get to be on shows with them or do songs with them and stuff. If they've made it to that level that where you're kind of aiming at, where you get to travel and you really eat off of it and it can take you places, you know, it's almost always comes at the cost of their relations with their families and their loved ones. You know what I mean? There's very rare exceptions to that. And I've been around long enough to see people go through a cycle where if you can get successful at it long enough, then it can all be reconnected, because then you can afford to bring your family back into the fold of the lifestyle and do it on a little bit bigger level and stuff. But when you're just like grinding, you know, like in a van with the homies, year in, year out like that, like you can't, you know, that your family, that's not a great way, you know what I mean, to raise a family. So
it can be tough on the family. Yeah.
So to do that, that's what it takes for most people is 10 to 15 years of living that lifestyle before you actually can get anything you're doing to break on that level, because I mean, partially just they're accumulating their 10,000 hours of trying to be a magnetic, creative person, draw people to their movement or whatever, you know. It's a strange magic. It's a strange magic, this stuff that we tap into. And, you know, when I was younger, I was really lucky to be around people that broke some stuff down to me about ceremony in general and the sacredness of holding space for a ceremony. And that's anything from like a wedding or a birth celebration or, just sitting down to eat dinner, to get into that like reverent mind state to where you know that like the world out here that we deal with all the time in this material way is secondary, thirdary to like the actual nature of what life is, you know? And so when you can get in that reverent state of mind where you're like the food, you're thankful and you're connecting with where it came from and thinking of all the plant ancestors that made that food, you know what I mean? When you can get into that, it cleanses you and it opens you up and it makes you stronger and smarter. And I think that music can do that. Music is sort of like a nervous system hack that can access that, you know? And I think that because of that and the power that puts in people's hands, it's really dangerous magic actually when it's not wielded carefully, respectfully, with reverence, you know. And I don't ever mean to disrespect anybody, and I certainly don't mean to come off like I'm Mr. like blasting spiritual light out here with my music or anything like that, you know what I mean? But I have always had a mindset to try and make music that, like, when I'm an older person, and when I was like a check that I put on myself as an artist when I was young, from the things I was taught, was eventually I'm going to be this older person who will have evolved through a lot more growth and learning, hopefully. And then I'm going to be able to look back on my older selves, my younger selves, and I want to be happy with that person. I want to be pleased with what they're doing, you know? And so I sort of like started building that thinking into everything, especially like everything in my life, but especially with the songs, where I never want to listen to a song when I'm like 70, where I'm like, man, what was I on? You know what I mean? Like when I was younger, as a young dude, I would think about it that way and just be like, one interesting thing, if I could comment and take a minute and just soapbox or whatever for a minute on a bigger picture thing with hip hop, because it was the 50th anniversary of Kool Herc's party and everything this year.
Yeah. So
of course, shout out to the foremothers of the scene, you know, Sha Rock and Kool Herc and Coco Rock and everybody like that. That magic that they tapped into when in the, you know, the Bronx was literally burning, you know, like it was straight, like, you know what I mean? Like war zone, you know, like Beirut, you know, and those people figured out how to like hack electrons, and they did magic to create what they did, and the way that magnetized things. So in our culture, we know that there's these corporate interests that are pretty much watching everything all the time, figuring out how to plug into it and modify it and commodify it and make money off of it and influence people through it to make those people continually be malleable to their commercial interests. It's just, you know, it's the nature of those people that are selling us the stuff and making us the stuff, you know, and it's not necessarily inherently evil, but it gets a little out of hand, you know what I mean? And we know now, it's more common knowledge now, that there's corporate interests that also own pharmaceutical interests, prison complex interests, and music world interests. You know, music in general, in the way we know of it, commercial music where you buy copies of content and you go to presentations or concerts of the artists and you pay money like that. This kind of music that we understand in this culture is like straight from like mob houses and gambling houses. You know what I mean? It came from organized crime, who was always infiltrated by the government to some extent, and they were always corroborating, you know? And so the people all the way from the very beginning up through even nowadays, mostly out here in Humboldt, you know, it was a bunch of the ganja people that would make sure all the big shows were popping and everything like that, you know. But it's always been this thing where it's sort of married to a certain amount of illicit activity, you know what I mean? And illicit activity is always monitored and sort of controlled and driven by larger powers. And when we were younger, it wasn't the internet. I mean, the internet was out, but it didn't do what it does now. There was really no Google and the internet couldn't tell you anything instantly. And so to actually know things about like corporate structure or secret societies or mystery teachings or anything like that, you literally had to find books on the stuff, which were on certain things were really hard to find. There was no Amazon, find me any book anywhere on the planet instantly, like, you know. Right. And so being really lucky, certain people that I was around when I was younger, helped me to stuff, and it just changed how we looked at stuff. We started looking at everything, remembering always this, like everything we're doing really should be done in a sort of reverent ceremonial way because it's powerful magic. It's a basic thing that they taught us. These friends of ours, elder friends, taught us when we were younger. I grew up in Fresno originally, and when I was in high school there, it was the mid 90s, which was like pretty much the peak of violent crime in general in this country, statistically, and especially like gang-related violent crime. And Fresno was like per capita murder central many times over the years when I was during that time. So we were weirdos, you know what I mean? We were like telling in the hood, just talking about the Illuminati and like Christian conspiracies that had hijacked, how religion was hijacked. Like we were just on some shit when we were teenagers like that. Now these days, all the kids are like that, and every adult has got rabbit holes they've gone down because you can just like that, and it's not hard to go down a rabbit hole and learn a whole bunch of stuff. But when we were younger, that was not, especially in like around the rap culture, hip hop world and street stuff, like people were like, what are you guys talking about? You know? And I can remember being really young and when we were first getting serious about this stuff, a lot of our friends who were like actually Native American, African American people. A lot of our homies were like Laotian and Vietnamese, you know, in Fresno, and trying to tell people like, look, this hip hop shit, it's not what you think. Like these people that you see that are put on by these labels, before the internet made it so accessible that you could be so easily independent, and you had to go like Too Short or E40 out of the trunk to be a real independent dude for 10, 15 years or however they did that. You know, otherwise you had to go through the radio and MTV and stuff, and they really were the gatekeepers. And if they put you on, boom, you were, at least for a minute, you were going to be gigantic. That's just how it worked. And so not you know, those people had a large amount of power. And as soon as hip hop started having a voice where they were trying to talk about relevant stuff and wake people up, those artists would get sidelined and they would not get the promo. And before the internet, they could effectively do that. It was no problem to just straight up block you, and you were not going to be heard, no matter how dope you were, no matter how busy and thorough your team was. It just like wasn't going to happen.
On the radio station.
Wasn't happening. So when we're like, you know, me and my homies that I first started rapping with were all a bunch of white dudes, and so it was like no one would listen to us. Really, they were like, how are you gonna, I'm a black dude, how are you as a white dude gonna tell me that I don't understand what black culture is? You know what I mean? And I get it, how I probably sounded ridiculous in certain ways, but I was just listening to a podcast the other day where there is an NPR podcast about the history of hip hop. It's pretty dope. And they were talking with Master P, and, you know, shout out Master P. I mean, I think he was like the biggest hip hop, like maybe one of the biggest record labels independent ever, maybe. You know, it was gigantic. And that was because of, you know, vision, work ethic, formula, strategy. You know what I mean? Like they laid out a blueprint, a foundation. And no disrespect to Master P or anybody who's fans of that music, but I'm just telling you what Master P himself was saying on this podcast, where he was like, oh, we made this music that created an environment that fed the mentality that promoted criminal behavior, which landed people in jail, which landed people in precarious situations, getting in scraps and fights and beefs and illicit business and get trapped in those ways. Even just the idea that being young and promiscuous is so promoted through the music. You know, one of the worst things you can do is get pregnant with a child before you're ready for that. You know what I mean? And so the Master P was like, you know, I understand now that I was sort of being used as a character to create this environment that benefited these people that own specific interests financially. And so now he said, well, I used to be part of the problem. Now I'm trying to be part of the solution. And so I'm 47 years old. I've been trying to be involved in this culture for like 25 years, probably, you know, seriously. Since I was a little kid, since I was like 11, I've been blowing up the homies on the block, memorizing Rakim rhymes. Like that's the first time I ever rapped in front of everybody and was like, oh shit, was like, I knew the whole Follow the Leader, Rakim. I knew that whole song because I just listened to it like over and over and over in 1986 or 87 or whatever that was, you know what I mean? And like I'm out on the sidewalk and I was like, follow me into a solo. Get it? And the homies were just like, oh my God, you know what I mean? And that was probably like the first time I ever got electrified by rapping in front of people, you know. But as successful as Rakim was, and as much as he's respected as the God MC, was that who the labels were pushing though? Was that the type of artist that they were trying to see be dope and be huge through the 80s? Not really, you know? And he was, you know, in 1987 talking about, you know, third eye vision and astral projection and, you know what I mean? Like, dude. Yeah. And he was probably whatever, like 20 at the time or something like that, you know? So I know I'm on a bit of a tangent, but just whether it's hip hop and Humboldt or hip hop anywhere, really any kind of music where if people are using the drum and the chanting, and we're using the lights and the vibe and the botanicals and the entheogens and altering substances, and we're dancing in a circle and we're doing all this stuff, you call in a very, very, very old power in there. And so to engage in any of this stuff without respecting that and being reverent of that fact and knowing that what you're saying and what you're projecting is probably going to influence somebody, because when you're just someone, when you're at a show, even as an artist, when you're at a show and you see somebody really, really channel the stuff, you become like, you geek out. You know, you become, it's like they become like bigger than life and feel that whatever that is, it's hard to describe. You understand what I'm saying though?
Oh yeah.
And when you become that person and then influence people, like whether they always notice it or not, they carry things forward from that into their life, and they base decisions made from feelings that they may not even remember. And then, you know, things happen. I remember one time there was this little bar in Chico that we played in, one of the first bars we ever played. We had this whole band, you know, with keys and bass, the whole shit, with a DJ and rapping, like, and this was like, you know, late 90s. So there wasn't, I mean, there were like the Roots was out, that happened out there, but it wasn't like now. It's like there's a lot of that.
I was Arrested Development did that sometimes.
Yeah. For performance,
did the MTV. You did the Unplugged, and then it was the Brand New Heavies.
Yep.
1991 Heavy Rhymes Volume 1, which I always refer to because that was like that blew my mind. Like besides the Roots, there was Brand New Heavies did this record and had a whole bunch of MCs in the room, right? Grand Poobah, Cool G Rap, Farside did the Soulflower on there, right? Yeah, cool stuff.
Swizz with the library reference.
Hey, heck yeah.
So anyway, I don't know. I was on one a little bit there, but you know that's been kind of central to my outlook of how I try and make my music, you know, personally, and what I'm trying to tap into, even when I'm involved with other people, you know, like rolling with James, OEB, and the, you know, Blow Something Click, you know, them boys aren't exactly out there talking about like third eye vision or spiritual things like that, but they're out there channeling their experience into something that's related to people, that's relatable to people that have been through shit like they've been through. And we're using the drum, and we're doing the chants, and we're doing the call and responses, and we're getting people connected in that way that charges them up and gives them some more of that vital energy to walk out and face the rest of their day and the rest of their life with, because it's fucking hard out here, man. They're making this world hard in a lot of unnecessary ways, you know?
Yep.
So I've found that there's not necessarily, and hip hop is such a beautiful illustration of this culturally, that you can be hood, and you can be even criminally oriented. You could even be to some degree violent in defense of your safety and your principles and things like that, and also still be spiritual and still be creative and still be magnetic and dope and important to people outside of whatever that gnarly sphere of activity that you're trying to survive is doing to you. You know what I mean? And I think that for a lot of people, at least in my era, when it was like the whole world was against rap music, like the whole world was like, oh no, we do not want our kids to like this shit. Even though behind the scenes, there were people that were intentionally trying to take like the worst stereotypes of Black culture and put a big spotlight on that and say, this is what Black culture is. This is what it is. It's all gangsters. It's all killers. It's all drugs and pimps and everything. There's an agenda behind that kind of focus that benefited people in specific ways, mostly white people, mostly non-Black people, benefiting from portraying Black culture in a specific way. You understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And you don't have to be Black to understand that. You don't have to be Black to observe that and realize that you don't want to be a part of that, even though you love this culture of the music, of the fashion and the art and creativity of a culture that's ultimately, a Black originated culture in our country that has roots in ancient Black culture, traditionally, musically. And if you really study America, and I know Swizz can back me on this because he's a true student of music in general, not just hip hop, but if you really study how American music has been built, it's always built in these places where, I mean, you think the Bronx is gnarly now. Check out the Bronx in 1780 or something. You know what I mean? It was like just filth infested, plagued out, gnarly poverty. But in those places, you would have Irish people mingling with African people, mingling with immigrants from Germany or somewhere that are fleeing some war. You know, it was like those places would have pockets and communities where different races of people were sort of forced by the socioeconomic factors of that time to live together and intermingle. And music always gets made by them people creating some kind of Creole culture like that. And New Orleans and the jazz tradition from there is the same. Blues music and country mountain music, the way they've fused, and how country and rock and everything has come out of those. It's always marginalized people who have been pressed from their homeland and ended up somewhere that was sort of foreign to them. You know what I mean? And then they build something new with the people there who are also have been displaced from their homelands or from their normal traditions. And so anywhere you see that happening, that's what we had in the Bronx. You have people from Cuba, Puerto Rico, from Africa, from Jamaica, from, you know, all those places. And then of course, you know, people whose literal like grandma and grandpa had fled from the South, from the Civil War and shit. You know what I mean? There's like that's the population out there that was still in the Bronx at that time, you know? So I don't know exactly what my point of that is. It's just that I feel like that part of what hip hop really means and what it's about and what purpose it serves for humanity in the bigger picture, I think gets so lost in why people go after it. Because street dudes see a way to be like, shit, I could rap hella good. This dude's got a studio. We could get these shows going. I can get money. I don't have to do this other McDonald's or drugs or whatever bullshit options are available to us at the bottom down here of the socioeconomic structure like that, you know? So I think that so often it's really just like, well, I'd rather do this than some other bullshit. I would way rather be able to be somebody who has this lifestyle where I can come and go as I please. I can have nice shit. You know what I mean? I can be comfortable. My family can be comfortable. It's like everybody really wants and deserves that, you know? And so many people get called into doing music because they need a way to live. And that's they're called to that. And I think that's admirable and beautiful. It just is dangerous because the Master P thing I was listening to was talking about the bro Mac Phipps, was one of the No Limit guys who's in jail. He ended up in a club one night. Somebody got shot. He didn't shoot him. Hella people corroborated that they seen that he didn't shoot him. And the cops did this crazy crooked thing where they like threatened and harassed people that wanted to testify that he wasn't the dude. And they built this, I mean, it's crazy. You should check it out. It's crazy. But the whole reason that was the case was because that dude was not like a G rapper. He was not a gangster rapper. They interviewed people that he grew up with, and he was like, you know, like a funny rapper as a young dude, and then kind of like a conscious rapper dude. But he became super lyrical and well known, and No Limit recruited him. And they were like, yo, they didn't, you know, Master P and them, according to what Master P said, not what I'm saying, but what Master P said, is that they didn't really understand how they were being used as a weapon a bit against their own culture that way. All he saw was, this is a way that I can get my people into nice houses, get them out of the hood. That's all he was doing. And he did that shit for like years. You know, I mean, he made many, many millionaires. And so that other bro that was that the podcast was sort of centered around, he was like, all right, well, let me switch it up. Let me get this money and let me No Limit soldier for a while. And then I'll be able to get my own platform, and I'll be able to get back to doing stuff more like, that was like his original idea. This ain't me, but I can adopt this caricature and I can play this role and be that dude and get money. And at the club that the grime went down in was this really small spot. He had started to move away from No Limit and was basically trying to do that thing where he was going to go back to trying to be himself, rebuild his own brand and self and like that. But he had to kind of start over. So he's in this grimy little club, and just having decided to go that way and make that music that brought them kind of people in there who all had guns and who was all ready to get with it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not disrespecting an artist who uses hip hop as a way to speak about their environment and tell those stories for the good purposes that serves. But when people do that out of some sort of self-serving intention and they're not really actually trying to make you see the ghetto in a bad way, you know? Too Short was talking about how he was constantly trying, he would make his pimp songs and all that, like, but he would also, then there's like Life Is Too Short, where that whole point of that song is that, like, man, your life is over in a second. You have to be dope. You have to make something of yourself. And he said he was constantly trying to balance his records that way, and they were always like, no, you got to do the nasty Too Short. That's what people want. That's what we want to sell, you know? And so now myself being 47, looking at a bunch of these dudes who are my age or older that I grew up with, it's getting to be really common that's what these guys are talking about, where they're like, you know, back then we were just trying to eat, we were trying to build something for our family, and we didn't really understand that our creativity was being weaponized against us in our culture, you know? So for all you youngsters out there listening to Old Man Hathaway rant on this shit, just please remember, this comes from like an ancient tradition. This is as old as time. And when we get on the stage and when we start trying to channel that energy and give people that juice, man, just please try and don't pollute it. Give them the goods. You know what I mean? Give them the goods.
That's it. That was honestly, that might have been one of the best segments right there on this whole pod, because it's really truth, man. Like, people don't realize that at all. You know, I go out to shows all the time, and you don't really, and I mean, I'm even kind of an energetic person, you know what I mean? And you just forget that it really is conjuring up. It's people are casting spells, you know what I mean? Like, and it's not in this, you know, typical kind of like fantasy thing, like it's portrayed in, you know, books and movies and media or video games and everything like that. It's on a different level.
It's not Harry Potter, but it's magic, bro.
Right. The vibrations are real, and energy is all real. You know what I mean? And so how you're manifesting it in your life and what you're doing in your life, that's all, it's meaningful and makes a big difference. You know what I mean? And so I really appreciate you bringing that to this podcast, Hap. That's super important for all these artists to hear out here. You know what I mean? You got to think about what you're doing when you're at a venue and you're creating a vibe, a scene.
It's an environment.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's its own little biosphere. You know that. Yeah.
I mean, that's crucial. I mean, you know, when we're out doing shows, you know, we're to the point where we have a playlist that we're pretty much getting the house music to be played on, you know, leading up. You know, I know
to set your vibe, like
we're playing the music in the room, we're setting the vibe. You know what I mean?
It's crucial.
It's super important. You know what I mean? We try to rally, get everyone together for a quick minute.
You're like performing before you're on stage. The ceremonies start before you're even there.
Yeah, you know, I know a few groups who are out there that they're always, after we tour for a few days, they got a track that they're just it's a goodie mob track. It's just every single time I'm like, oh man, they're not a hip hop group. But it's like before they get on stage, it's like after day 3, I was like, oh yeah, here they come. You know, as soon as the track starts bumping, you just see musicians are starting to fiddle around, and they're all up on stage, and shit's about to go down.
Hey, this is game. This is game. What he's talking about. Okay, all performers recognize.
You can really set the vibe. You can be all wily and whack, and you know, and drunk and whatever not. And there's a place for that. You know, if you're a party crew and you want to get up on the mic and you want to do, that's one thing. But if you want to be extra dope, you know, I mean, you know, and this is just one of those, again, those old man things. Because like, you know, in my 20s, 30s, like I was definitely partying, you know, pretty good when I was getting on stage. It was fun to have drinks on stage and get loose and all that. But the older I get, man, every time I just like have a soda or, you know, or a piece of chocolate, smoke a little joint or something before I play, or have a coffee, I'm on point. And I'm prepared. You know what I mean? So preparation comes with how you treat yourself, especially if you're on the road. You can't be outraging every night and think your voice is going to last. It's easy for me to say, maybe because I'm a keyboardist and I sing backups kind of quietly and I'm a low voice in the background. But I'll tell you what, you know, if you're an MC and you're out working, then you really should be thinking about, you know, what you're putting in your system if you're on the road.
You need to charge for this episode because this man's handing out game, bro. This is professional advice. You know what I'm saying?
There is a place to party. You know, I mean, you know, I'll try not to put too much on the table, but when I stopped, you know, drinking at shows, I spent the first year or so, I'd have a ginger ale, or I'd have just a soda, a Sprite with a lemon in it, always looked like a vodka. It always looked like something, you know what I mean? And, you know, I'll be sipping on it, you know, and it also felt good to me, you know what I mean? There was something to sip on the stage. We're not smoking in the weed, you know, smoking on stage really. So, you know, there was that. And, you know, so, you know, you don't want to fake it on stage. Of course you want to be real, but if you want to be clear and still put on a raging party and get people to think that you're getting down, well, it's okay, because you can get off the stage when you're done and get loose. You know, but you do own that minute. That's like, for me, it's like the only time in life I get to actually be with myself where no one could get at me is when I'm on the stage behind my keyboard playing the show.
In that zone. Yeah.
I'm in a bubble. Sometimes I'm getting up there. Sometimes
it's
I'm over
deeply healing.
There's an observant, you know.
Yeah.
That happens, you know. We get into those places, and so, you know, I've found that, being prepared for the show and owning the room always reflects on what's happening in the room afterwards, right? What happened at the Blue Lake, you know, after our show, you know what I mean? It's like we weren't partying at all, you know what I mean? Richard won't smoke on show day, you know what I mean? Just because he wants to make sure his voice is on point. So yeah, that's for sure. Yeah.
Hey, I respect that. I smoke a lot of weed myself. I mean, I just can't even front, you know, but ultimately, you know, really the way we want to be. And the odd thing about it is I really think that music is I believe music is a consciousness, you know. I believe it's like a spirit that's actually kind of alive in its own way. And we have a relationship with this, and it wants us to be healthy, because then we can keep making it and we can keep existing together, you know. And so the way that music interacts with our nervous system, to me, I'm pretty sure that it's a consciousness trying to show us a way to healing, because we're really damaged from this time that we're in. It's really toxic. Just the chemistry of our time is super toxic, and the disease and everything is super gnarly, you know. So most of the time when we're drinking or smoking or doing much of anything to alter our perspective or our consciousness, it's because we don't like where we're at. We want to change it. You know what I mean? And when you start liking where you're at and who you actually are, then you feel less inclined to have to change that to feel better, you know? And, you know, again, I don't mean to be all like preachy or weird, but music, I've seen music as a path to sobriety for people many times, but I've also seen it as a path to indulgence and abuse, you know? So it just, you know, be very careful. You start walking down these roads where there's this powerful magic, you know what I mean? Because it might take you on a ride you ain't really ready for, you know? But I can say I could count a number of times where music literally saved my life, like actually saved my life. I had one experience where I was a friend of mine that there was an in-home invasion in their house, and a couple of friends of mine got killed. And I was supposed to be there, you know. I was about 30 to 40 minutes behind the incident when I arrived, and I get there and it's all taped off and cops and everything. And the reason that I was late is because my son was probably about 4 or 5, and I was just starting to teach him piano, you know. And we were on vacation. I was back in my hometown in Fresno on vacation, and we woke up in the morning. We were supposed to go meet some friends and be at the house where this thing happened. And I was like, you know what? We always were bringing our little keyboard along so we could do daily exercises on the keys with my son. So the more you work on it, faster you get to 10,000 hours. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just trying to get into his 10,000 hours on the keyboard, you know, and it was just our cool thing. So I'm like, you know what? Hold up. Let's take some time. Let's go ahead and do the keyboard thing for a little while. And then that'll be out of the way, and we'll feel like we did some chores, and we can relax the rest of the day with the friends over at the place. We were going to eat and drink and be merry. And man, that was about 30 or 40 minutes worth of sitting there with the keyboard with my son. And then I show up about 30 minutes, 40 minutes late for this horrible thing, you know? So, I mean, I could go on and on and on, where if you really look close, the reason why this wild thing, how did I dodge that or wasn't in that spot, is because I was trying to be music oriented. Even as a youngster, we were inside in the studio fucking around instead of out here doing bullshit. I don't even know how many times it saved me, because I wasn't out there. You know what I'm saying? We were in the lab trying to do stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, it'll take care of you. But, you know, any powerful spirit will have these other kind of spirits that try to attach it and kind of live through it and parasite on it and stuff. So
something to be aware of.
yeah.
Nah, this has been bars the whole time, Hab. I mean, especially for the younger artists, you know, out here, that they're gonna appreciate this so much.
I hope so.
You know,
I hope so.
No, heck yeah.
I just sound like some old weirdo out here.
No,
You know,
not at all.
you know, how many times? I mean, I moved here. I've seen between 1998 and 2002 or 3. You know, and I moved down to LA for a couple of years, but I was always coming up and doing shows. I was working with Garth the whole time, recording with Eli. You know, and making my way back and forth. And by 2004 or 5, there was just like bustling scene of MCs again. You know, and then and then a little bit of a lull, and then it pops again, and it just, you know, the ebb and flow, and with every generation, you know, it's crews that are really believing in what they're doing. They're really digging on it. They're catching fire. They got support. You know, when you have movement in your movement, it fuels it. We had that, you know. For our crew, it was like there weren't that many crews. You know, when you think about like OEB, like James and I not really worked together all that much. We've all been on shows together, but we've never really, you know, he had his pillar, and Oli had a pillar, and I had a pillar. We all had our pillars. Our, you know, I repped a little more of the Sohum because I was with, you know, Eli, Mika, Paul, Garth Vader, those vibes. But then there was also, you know, a bit of the Northern Humboldt and you know, bringing the band together and all that. So it's just, you know, every generation is gonna catch on to what works for them, and I'm even noticing it now. I'm like finally starting to work with some of these cats and making beats with some young bloods, and I'm feeling good about that because it's fun to be recognized, you know. And like Big Suave, there's a perfect example. That's a young blood right here. This is a young kid who we met because Object Heavy with Knack, we were going to do a hip hop show at the college, at Cal Poly, and he was there, and they were like, "Hey, it's young MC. He's on the scene. He goes to school here. You know, he's got the juice. He's got the people. You know." And we got him up on stage, and the place went nuts, and it was really fun. And you know, I see him out at the Yurok, at the Salmon Fest up in Klamath, you know, and he's just out there, and like, oh, and Object Heavy's playing, and I'm like, I didn't realize it was him at first. He's out there rocking a Fat Bull hat, you know, and then I see that they put out his music video, and Juice was showing some stuff that he did, you know, and all this, and you know, and I was like, wow, you know, and I got on his story, and I was like, yo, man. Humboldt hip hop, there's work happening. There's new generations, you know, and all the stuff that, you know, Rowdy and Soul and Reef, and there's this whole crew that is starting to bubble right now, and it's really fun to watch because for a long time it was just a few of our crews that were just a few of us, and you know, weren't getting the recognition or at least the support from the community on a level, right? Humboldt hip hop, weed hip hop, not everyone's trying to hear that. Not even some of the weed community. A lot of the weed community is like, yo, shut the fuck up. You know what I mean?
Blowing up the spot.
But, you know, but we had, you know, I'd like to say that the people, we all had vision. We knew this time was coming. There's no way we didn't. I didn't come up with that. I was not born in Humboldt. But I knew long ago, like, this shit's going legal one day, and y'all better be ready for this shit, you know. And there's others that knew, you know. It's just a matter of, you know, making noise and getting behind your movement, you know. So when you think about the youngsters, it's like it's fun to watch, you know. And I'm realizing that people like I think it's Albert and Rowdy like have roots with Eli and Southern Humboldt. There's the families know each other, and it's fun. And I, you know, and a lot of these cats grew up here. I was talking with Soul. It's like, yo, I spent a lot of my time in Eureka, you know what I mean? And it's fun to know that. I'm like, wow, I probably know some of their parents and shit. You know, their aunts and uncles and their cousins, and I'm like, this is cool. You know, I mean, it's like it ages us in a way, but it's refreshing to be excited about the future of our scene, because back in 1990, it was One Ton and Baby J DJing at Hefe's, and putting hip hop crews together, and Adam Brandt, who was Jewish Cowboy. It was like pre-Freestyle Kings, really. There was another Freestyle Kings, which I've mentioned in other episodes, right? It was like there was a group that was before it actually popped, and it was popping already with all those cats, so I couldn't say anything about that other than it just shifted gears completely, and Adam had his own vision, and I was the one who wanted to take on the ride, and so I got to meet Garth and got to know all these dudes from Southern Humboldt. Met Just One, met Galen, you know what I mean? He's born and raised Humboldt kids, and it was through Potluck where Oli kind of came into our world too. So it was like there was a lot of, and that was all there was.
That's
now.
Oh, my bad.
No, go ahead. No, that's pretty much it. It's like
I was just thinking how is a trip with hip hop in general, but especially Humboldt hip hop, because it was like hip hop was born, in my lifetime. Well, real close to it, anyways. I mean, the
and commercial version, right?
Right,
like you said, Herc's Party.
Yeah, that was. I was born in '76. Herc's Party's in '73. So I was. Hip hop was born just a minute before me, right? So I grew up with this culture, and so to me it feels like something that's been born and lived and grown up in my lifetime. I feel like I'm the same age as hip hop. That's how it feels. And they call it 50. I'm 47. It's music time. That's So I think that it's really neat to have a culture that we get to know from the beginning like that, and have it be in this age where we've documented it from that time, because traditions that led up to that, a lot of the dance hall stuff in Jamaica, that was what Kool Herc was accessing when he put his sound system together and when he planned his strategy for how to rock a party. That's drawing off of the dance hall tradition in Jamaica, and DJs who nobody knows who they are. No, that would like just miss the most of that. Some people who are really into it will know some stuff, but history in general has lost track of that because it was just kind of before the age of so much of the stuff being able to be documented. So hip hop itself as a culture is young enough that dudes our age actually can track it back to the beginning, and people coming after us will be able to have an accurate look back at the beginning, know exactly how it was, exactly who did it, everything. The other traditions musically, they're in the past. Like nobody really knows who made up that riff, because the first guy who recorded it was this guy, but he heard that from some bro in the mountains, and you know what I mean? Like, so, and now fast forward a little further along when hip hop gets out to the West Coast, and then cats who are that we're talking about are first getting exposed to b-boy and rap culture, and they're the first ones to do it in Humboldt County. There's some of these bros are like the first dude who ever rapped in Eureka or whatever, Case and all these guys who grew up, they probably know, oh, it was so-and-so. He's the first dude who ever, what I mean?
Manifest. I don't know. I know Manifest. There was Lakota. I know that the Potluck dudes were there, right? One Ton, James Boy came out of that, Al Rock, and then there was Garth Vader, and then the LCA guys, like they were all at it, and OEB.
That's all the genesis, right?
Yeah, there, and I'm missing that there's Absolute on end. You can't, those guys, Pharmacist Chris Carroll, Roland. Yeah,
I'm glad Swizz is here because
I'm missing a whole bunch, because some of those cats were, grew up here long before my time.
Right.
As far as what was happening around town, I'm more versed on what happened at the show.
Right.
So I was playing in a band, and then suddenly people were like going to see a hip hop show that was local.
But you lived out here and you actually did business out here and built economy and everything. I'm like, what I should be billed as is like Humboldt's guest DJ or something. You know what I mean? Because I just get called out to work at the shows with Oli. I get called out to DJ for the homie and stuff like that.
You're an LCA, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're in Humboldt hip hop.
Yeah.
Hey, I was never in LCA. I never actually got that job as their DJ. That ended up being the homie Sam. DJ Sam.
Right.
I never got the job, but what we did was we came out and we did our show, which we connected with them. We saw how they were live. Like I had listened to their music on MySpace, and that's one thing. especially with hip hop, when you really you cut the biscuit when you watch them perform for real, you know, and real what's their energy like with the people, you know. And man, them boys had fun, and they had that infectious party thing that had people wowing. And so, and the stuff we were doing was way more serious oriented music. And so after a couple of shows with those guys, I realized, you know, our chemistry, though we were sort of different, it worked well. You know what I mean? Because the same people that like to party with LCA like to get into some lyricism shit with us. You know what I mean? And not that they weren't lyrical. I don't mean to sound that way, but that music was very much oriented around
lower class alcoholics. They were partying.
You know what I'm saying? So, so we were just at the point where we were like, yo, we need to start touring. So we, the formula that really worked the best at the time, and probably still works really well now. You know, I'm not really a professional dude. I'm just a very happy hobbyist with this stuff, you know. But we would book artists that we knew were dope, and certain artists, underground artists in cities, and we'd book them as the headliner, and then we would be the openers. But we also booked the tour, so we were like the promoter too, and one of our guys would be the MC host of the show, and we'd put a tour together like that. So we did one of those with LCA, and that was actually our first like legit organized tour, you know, our crew. And yeah, we ran up and down the West Coast, had our little fun, and
that's what's up.
Got into it. But yeah, I never really actually been in it. Well, no. I'm BSE, you know what I mean? I am BSE's official DJ, even though you might see them with some other bro, because, you know, I'm not always able to be around. So I suppose I am humble.
Yeah.
But you know what I'm saying, though. I've always sort of just been called in as like, oh, the homie, we got to get the homie Hap out. He'll bring something to the table over here with us and help us make it dope, you know? So I'm comfortable with that. I'm cool with that.
Hey, there's value in that, man. You know, because there's not enough, I shout out to the DJs that are out here, but there's not enough DJs out here. You know what I mean? And I don't mean to say that we need a whole bunch of DJs to flood it and, you know, cut what, you know, the homies gave Pressure and everybody else is getting, and Goldilocks is getting paid. I'm not saying it like that. I'm just saying we do need to foster the next generation, you know. So shout out to the homie DJ Run Dad, Michelle Miller, you know what I mean? Because I see her doing big things out there, teaching the youth how to DJ. I see Dr. Oop teaching the youth how to freestyle, how to MC and everything like that. You know, shout out to the Fab Bowl Cypher, because that's infrastructure that's existed in Humboldt County for about 10 years now, where people can come and work on their skills. You can bring your bars or come practice and come and try to actually do it off the dome too. You know, either or. Just come out to the Fab Bowl Cypher.
You know, KRS-One says that people talk about the elements of hip hop. Most people will generally say there's 4. You got b-boying, graph writing, MC, and DJing. Then some people will also say that there's the 5th is beatboxing. Some people will say that the 5th element is actually intellect, just creative intellect is the 5th element. If you talk to KRS-One, he's talking about more like 12 elements of hip hop, where like entrepreneurship is actually an element of hip hop. The teaching part, we're talking about like actual instructorship, mentorship, and teaching. Being a teacher of the craft and the culture is an aspect of hip hop. So really, like if you're not engaged in all 12 of the KRS-One steps to being a real hip hopper, you know, your game might not be as complete as you think. So
that's right.
Shout out KRS-One.
And artists suffer from not figuring that out, or at least having someone on the team that will. You know,
right.
So, you know, shout out to MCs who know who's got their back, you know, and not to say that people aren't their friends, and, you know, but some people want to be down and some people know how to be down. And any of you business heads out there who love hip hop and love your homies who are trying real hard, and, you know, getting behind them would be a great service to an artist who could really use the help. You know, I could say that to about multiple bands that I've played in, and you know, and it's, you know, if you want to be the business of your artistry, then you got to get down with it. And you have to get at least one person who understands that knowledge. You know what I mean? I'm now, you know, in the many groups that I've been in, they've all been successful in different ways and put out a lot of music, you know, new songs on Spotify. They're all out there. But, you know, Object Heavy, you know, we're managing ourselves. We're keeping books. We're paying attention. We're having meetings. We're making sure we're getting a little content. We're figuring out what makes sense. We finally have a booking agent because we've got a track record. We've kept track of our, when people are looking to book us, they want to see our history. So we have all our numbers. We have everything dialed to a point where we're an attractive offer to someone being booked for something, because you know you're going to get something professional. And I've built my reputation on being on point like that. I haven't always had my acumen straight as far as, the details. It's why I look to people who are good at these other things. Like, I'm not the guy doing the video. You don't want me doing the video.
You want to call just one.
You want to call Justin. You want to talk to Leo, talk to you. There's a number of people that can do that. It's important. So it's important to, because once an artist starts to micromanage themselves, you're kind of fucked, because you're just going to make your own decisions based on what you saw here or there or wherever. It's not going to serve you well, So I'm always happy when I see there's like an engineer or a producer or someone who's kind of at the core, the helm, who's holding it all together for the crew.
Game kids.
Not to say that the artists don't have their own abilities, because I can't speak for anyone other than myself. You know what I mean?
But it's truth, though. It's truth. And you look at, just for instance, and of course, again, this ain't downplaying any soul or reef skills, but they got Juice, engineer. He knows industry, you know what I mean? He's got a lot of skills. You got to have somebody like that. We just a few weeks ago, we had the homie Highway in here with the West Coast Love Tour, Henny Holyfield, you know what I mean? And we had the homie Bub, the SOP, you know what I mean? He's one of those guys for that crew that's really bringing it together. He's a videographer, just really doing the whole content creation, the vision, like everybody has to have a vision that's involved. And some people have to have a vision that's kind of, wider than others, you know what I mean? And you got to have somebody like that on your team 100%.
Yeah.
You always want to have a producer or another set of eyes or another set of ears, whenever and I produce music, but I'm not an engineer, I'm much more a hobbyist as an engineer. I could sit there and be like, I kind of figure it out, but I'll probably have to undo something and be like, yo, Hap, can you come in here and fix this shit? I think I erased something. You know what I mean? Like, I'm at that level, but producer in a different kind of way. So again, it comes back to surrounding yourself with the right unit that people are going to have your back,
Yeah. I think it made me think of Highway and Big Daddy, when Highway was really first getting going, and to this day, like nobody supported Highway like Brian, period. You know what I mean? Like
full management.
He took full management. He built shows. He promoted him. He was constantly pushing him. It's like, it really takes that kind of dedication, because he loved Highway, loved Aaron, you know what I mean? And he saw that he had that thing and he could really do it and knew he needed. And Brian's like, well, I'm trying to be that. And so that's inspiring to me, you know what I mean? And I think that I don't want to take anything away from what Highway has done on his own, from being dope and from working hard at it and sticking with it, because obviously that's what it takes to be dope. But there's a lot of people who are dope and try for a long time and stick with it, but they don't have no Big Daddy in their corner. And so certain things don't happen for them if they don't have the acumen, like you say, to be also pushing this angle and also handling that business. And, I don't mean to speak for Aaron, but I think that he would probably agree that at a certain formative time, as he's building his momentum, trying to be a dad, trying to be a dude, and hold down his life and be a dope artist, he didn't have the bandwidth to be doing the things that Brian was doing for him. You know what I mean? And if you look, especially through hip hop, you'll see tons of relationships like that, where some MC was like been doing it for 10 years, but somebody who actually had the dedication and the intelligence and the trustworthiness and you know what I mean? And actually built a business around them. And then they became somebody that we actually know and have their art, So without that, and that's why KRS-One stressed that part of it, that the entrepreneurship aspect of bringing money to the marginalized community who you are essentially taking money from. If you're an artist and they're coming to your show and they're buying your record, if you're not finding ways to make your business be their business too and turn that back around, it's not very community oriented. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And ultimately, I don't want to conflate things or tie things together that don't necessarily belong, but plenty of people in the hip hop world are inspired by the ethics and examples that were set by groups like like the Black Panthers, like the American Indian movement, where they started just organizing on their own. We're going to take control of how we have food. We're going to take control of how we service our community for medicine and education and everything like that. And, you know, again, I don't mean to like be, you know, like I told you so, but, you know, my whole focus before I really got serious about music, the first thing in the world that I decided maybe I could be as a grown-up, as I couldn't figure out how I would fit in this culture. As I started 16, 17, 18, like seeing the world at that age and just trying to figure out, where do I belong in this? I don't want to be like any of the people that I see. Nobody in my family was really happy with their life or their world. You know, it was just like no idea what to do. And I saw farming. It was like, well, people will always need food and medicine and things like that. You know what I mean? So my first real calling was actually to plants like that, you know? And so pursuing that, actually have to learn science and have to learn if you're going to be that dude and be, you know, but when I started doing music, that mindset and that ethos, and also artistically, I saw all kinds of connections and metaphors and allegories that I could use in nature and in farming to make statements and messages out of in the music, you know. And my first solo record that I ever put out was called Agronomy, you know, and my whole thing with the record was trying to show that everything we do, all of our culture it's like a crop. It's like a thing that you grow, and the way you feed it will influence how it grows and everything. And I was real big into the Panther teachings about community self-reliance. And they were all about trying to have farming going on and trying to access food from other places. You know, food sovereignty, as they would probably call it now, was a big deal to the original Panther founders and to most real social movements that I think have the potential to actually make something happen. They always have that understanding.
And so, that was why that free breakfast program was one of the biggest things, you know, that made an impact. You
and
know
all schools have that now, you know, and do people even realize that that's some Black Panther shit? You know what I mean? Most people don't, you know, most people don't even realize. So when we were younger, again, we was on some, man, we got to use hip hop as a vehicle to change this consciousness. And we were all like this. And honestly, like a lot of our friends and people that would be our supporters that could help build that momentum were like, these motherfuckers are weird. You know what I mean? And now it's like these people, you could talk to, like, let's probably talk to Master P. But I know a really good example is actually Immortal Technique. When Immortal Technique first came out, we were like, oh man, this dude is the best ever. This is that shit. He was like doing what we were trying to do, but like 10,000 times doper and more potent. And we were just like, fuck, we give up. You know what I mean? Fuck. You know, but, and he, as he went on, he's huge now into, all kinds of major activism. He built his label independently and immediately started putting his money into stuff. He's built orphanages in Afghanistan or something. He owns tons of cropland in like Colombia or Peru, I think, where he's from, Peru. He like bought a huge tract of farmland and has created this massive agriculture co-op. And so on his first record, he has them interludes and where he'll just talk shit over a beat, you know. And there's one called Broccoli and Beef. And he says something to the effect of, he's like making fun of like weird vegans and stuff. And he says something to the effect of, dietary choice should not be conflated with your sense of being a revolutionary. I'm paraphrasing him. It's something like that. I can't remember exactly what he said, but like your dietary choice has nothing to do with whether or not you're a revolutionary. So shut the fuck up. I like my beef and broccoli or something he says on the record, something like that. You know, I actually listened to him 6 or 8 years later in the interview, like cite that line and recant it and say, you know, at that time, I didn't understand how the global food system worked. And I didn't really understand the layers to this shit. And now I actually know that farming is like, and he's like saying all this shit that I said on a record like 6 or 8 years before that, but I'm just all corny and weird and I don't have anywhere near that like power and talent or whatever that is that he's plugged into. You know what I mean? But nowadays, it's like all of the older rappers are like, yeah, man, they're talking. When you listen to them talk on the side, not if you listen to their old records, but if you listen to them on a podcast or if you see them in an interview, they're talking about, yeah, man, I'm involved in this community garden project because the hood needs good food. We got these food deserts. They're throwing all these buzzwords around, the current buzzwords about this food sovereignty situation that the real forefathers of the cultural consciousness part of the movement where hip hop really come from, that's Panther stuff. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. That's the original gangs that were like, when Bambaataa and all them guys were like, look, we need to bring our gangs together. We have power if we actually organize. We don't have to fight each other. That consciousness, same. That's the East Coast version, of that.
Watts Prophets were a big part of that on the West Coast.
Yep.
When you talk about the origins of hip hop, maybe it's arguable. You're like, well, can't really count out West Coast as being a place of origin for hip hop when you think about Amdi, when you think about Watts Prophets, and a lot of that's based on the beatnik movement, right? When those beat poets from the Bay Area, we're all getting together with the cats from LA, and I only know a little bit about it, but there's conversations I've had with a couple of friends, not so recently, but that stuck with me, and knowing that Amdi lives up here, which is pretty cool.
It really is. I just real quick shout out to Amdi. Just as recent as my birthday on August 14th, I was blessed to be able to listen to Amdi on a radio station, WBLA, I think it is. And he was talking, and it was so cool because he was saying that really he was, and this is Amdi. So you're listening to it, he's knowing what he's talking about, and you got to listen to it with a certain, and he was like, the first rapper was Malcolm X. You know what I mean? He's getting into it at that level. You know what I mean? And it's really true. You know what I mean? A lot of the foundations of the culture really do come from the people that were using their voice to speak out in an eloquent
spoken
way.
Word with preacher mentality and eloquence. And, and it's where when you think about spoken word, when somebody's talking like this and then they stop, so you listen to Barack Obama is a very, modern version of beat poetry, you know what I mean? He's doing that spoken word, old school style, and
there's power in that.
Real power in that stuff, I mean,
and ultimately, most of the musical traditions that brought that in were drawing on the church, which was, a spiritual place. You could think what you want about American organized religion now and this gigantic, weird financial monster thing that it is, but like the people who grew up into the people who created hip hop were the church traditions for them was their parents who had been through some of the hardest times humans have gone through, in the modern times. And their church was not mega churches and crazy pastors with yachts and shit. Dude, that was people that got in their best clothes on Sunday and got together with the other people in their neighborhood, and they looked out for each other and they prayed together, like they had ceremony and prayed. And that power of that style of spoken word that you're talking about, that's the tradition where that comes from. And whether you're talking about the Watts Prophets and the beat poet stuff, or whether you're talking about people accessing those church and gospel traditions, those are all cultural crossroads. Even, like the preacher in a black church that's a Christian preacher doing that style of speaking, everything about the religion that they're using for the cup to hold that ceremony in is actually this Indo-European thing that they've hybridized their own culture with because of the American slavery thing and their displacement and diaspora. They're ultimately have fused something together where they fuse this Indo-European spiritual tradition with their African tradition, and something new happened. That's super hip hop. That is hip hop right there. When two different things are put together in a way that they make something new and bigger than what they were before, and everyone's like, it's like this simple that you would never have thought of, and something new, the merry-go-round on the turntables, and that's what unlocked that lightning for the kids on the dance floor. Like, you know what I mean? It's those.
It's necessity. It's a mother of invention.
And it's always a blending of cultures.
Do it out of necessity.
To be fresh and to be what's popping. You know what I mean? I think that's hip hop is always on the forefront of that. And so it's like you said, it's always going to be a mashup. And just for instance, like I think I don't want to say that trap music is at its end of its window. I can't say that myself or anything like that. But trap music is a it's a sound in hip hop. It's a sub, genre of hip hop, right? You know what I mean? And so it's just going to be a mashup of certain sounds from certain places mixed with certain sounds from other places. You know what I mean? And so a lot of it, coming from the South and Atlanta and everything. You know what I mean? And so there's always hip hop is always evolving. The sound is always changing. I can't say what the next sound is going to be, but what I do know is that in general, a lot of it comes out of the metro areas, whether it's going to be New York, LA, Atlanta, you know what I mean? So it's where there's a melting pot of people like you talked about earlier, you know what I mean? Like that's going to create that mashup, those new sounds, new energy. There's going to be a new something that pops, whether it's kind of like a big party or something like that, and music pops along with it, you know what I mean? I mean, we're looking at, just for instance, we got these local guys, shout out to the Cemetery Boys, young cats that they're doing the hyper pop lane. And so like, I'm not super versed on it, right? But I've heard the Cemetery Boys music and some other, music that sounds, I don't want to compare them to like Lil Pump or anything like that, but it's a subgenre, of hip hop and everything like that. And so it's all about that, are you going to be brave like the Cemetery Boys and do you and get that energy and creativity out that's in you, and does it mix up with the people and the current energy in the scene to make something new that people like and go towards? You know what I mean? Because they've done that. You know what I mean? City Hippies, they've done the same thing. They've created a wave in Humboldt County, and their sound is not, Reef can rap. You know what I mean? And Soul can croon. You know what I mean? And you wouldn't, and that's, they create they're together, they create a sound, you know what I mean? And separate, they have a sound, you know what I mean? And so they've created that wave. It's something that people have picked up, people like, you know what I mean? And so there's got to be, I think that hip hop is always moved forward by the youth. That's going to be a part of it. They're going to be a part of, what's popping, what's new and everything like that. So tapping in with the youth is going to be important if you want to really have any kind of longevity in hip hop, to be honest about it. Like it's no matter what, it's going to be the youth moving it forward, because the youth are going to be what's hip. You know what I mean? Like after a certain point in time, like, no matter how cool we are, you know what I mean? Like we're going to get aged to a point, and we're going to have to tap in. Yeah. That's exactly right. I see these young cats in the Bay Area where just like a dance gets big, you know what I mean? And from that, like it'll be like a 3-year bubble of like a little bit of a sound, and it's all kind of based around a dance, you know what I mean? And that's like a wave, you know what I mean? That's what a wave
Chubby
is.
Checker wrote a second Twist song. He said, "Let's twist again." Do you remember that he had the twist, right? That was huge, dance sensation. And then another year or two later, he put out "Let's Twist Again," like we did last summer. You know what I'm saying? That's
Let's twist
Gotta
again,
keep it moving.
like we did last year.
Yeah.
But if you can find something like that, I watched this show a while back, and it's stuck in my mind for some reason. It was a show about Vanilla Ice. And I don't know if you guys remember Vanilla Ice. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
So
I'm older than you. Yeah, man.
Yeah. So I think I was a freshman in high school when his record came out, but people loved it. Everybody loved it. I remember, man. Everybody of every color, boys and girls, everybody loved that shit. They loved that record in my high school when it first came out. And so, but then as happens to so many artists, the industry had kind of. They're like, well, this is the lane we want for you. You're going to look this way. You're going to have the dancers like this. This is going to be your sound and all that. And his story is a trip. If you listen to how he got treated, and he didn't make no money off of that. They made piles of money. It's a trippy story, And
it's an Elvis Chuck Berry story.
But he tapped something with that song where, the end of the little show I was watching. At the end of it, he was like. Performing at some fairground somewhere, and he was performing with the live band. That was how he was delivering the set. So the band starts, and he comes out. Crowd goes fucking nuts, and he goes, "All right, stop," and the band right there, and the crowd starts rapping the song for like the half of the first verse. The whole crowd collaborate, and he's just standing there. Dude, if you make one song that does that shit and you can go anywhere on the planet and do that, like what, regardless about the song, you tapped into something right there. You tapped into something that affected the consciousness generationally. And I mean, I'm not necessarily trying to say that like Vanilla Ice's music is super profound, but what he tapped into, that his music traveled on, is super profound and powerful. And I'm just saying that's like the proof of it. Where even Vanilla Ice, that, I mean, basically, I don't mean to diss him, I don't mean to sound like a jerk, but most people will be like, they'll dismiss him. You know, they're not going to really be like, yo, Vanilla is one of the legends, bro, or something like that. You know what I mean? But
And that's how I feel that way.
you know,
Just because I grew up in that, you know, and I was like, all right, well, you know, and I always understood that it wasn't Elvis, it was Chuck. I always understood that it wasn't, you know, it wasn't Mick, it was James. You know, was it Hammer? Was it Vanilla Ice? Yeah, you know, it's a tough one. You know what I mean? And that's something as a white person I try my best to recognize and pay attention to. But on a human level, and on a higher level, on a spiritual level, on a soul level, which you know doesn't see what society sees, is that, you know, whether he had business behind him, whether he had the label behind him, whatever powers that be put that in place, he did that, and it touched something. He made a huge mark, and again, and you know, and I do believe, you know, there's MCs out there that are like, yeah, man, I could care less whether or not one person hears this. Most cats that I know, they want to have that one song go that big, at least inside. You know, would I be bummed if something that I was part of won a bunch of Grammys? I mean,
I hope not.
You know, I mean, wouldn't that be cool? You know, whether it happens or not isn't even the point. If it does happen to someone from this area and someone breaks through, then that is a huge win for the economy and for all things in Humboldt County. You know what I mean? So it's important when Potluck breaks through and gets on a label, and you know, it's important when a bunch of us decide to get in the studio and make our own tracks, and then suddenly everyone's like, yo, we're gonna be making tracks, you know. And there were other cats doing it too, not to say we started that, obviously, you know, but once the reality of, oh, we could actually burn our own CDs.
Going way back.
Wait a minute,
I remember, bro. I remember.
Being in control of your distribution.
Man, you know what I mean?
Shit
And now
was
you're
crazy.
actually getting an opportunity to push. So, yeah.
Man, I can remember when it was new enough. You know, we made up some CDs and pressed beats on them. We would go to shows, like, you know, big other shows that we were going to as fans, and we'd just be outside, straight Sharpies on there, our crew name written on there, $5-10 a pop, dude. Just,
No, Sarge had
you know what I mean? Like, dude, no art, just straight.
Yep.
you know?
Sarge was pressing too.
Oh yeah, man. Early on, Jay the Sarge, he was hitting it hard, man. He was definitely. We got to a point where he would offer up. We would do trades. I'd go and play keyboards on some tracks for Windstrong, whoever not. You know what I mean? And then he'd be like, "Yo, come on through." Oops, sorry. We'll press some CDs. So yeah, it was fun. It was a fun shift in things.
See, and that's the shift that I hope. Again, man, I don't want to detract the younger viewers, man. I'm not targeting y'all, but it's all about learning. It's about learning what happened in the game. You know, this goes back to what Hap was talking about earlier in the podcast, where it used to cost you $1,000 to be able to press your own instrumental on a vinyl. You know what I mean? And so then the game changed.
Well, you were paying $1,000 for CDs. If you wanted to get 1,000 CDs from CD, you know, disc makers just before CD Baby. It was disc makers, and then you had to go through other, and there was no distribution before that. That wasn't the thing. You had to go and send those things out and hope that people would listen on the radio station. You had to get into the CMJs. You had to push, you know,
Which was
it wasn't
calls,
until CD Baby.
work. You had to have a plan. You had to know what you were doing. See, a lot of people just, you know, that separates, you know, the hobbyists, you know, from the people that really want to do
I'm
it.
grateful for Weed Life. I'm grateful for Humboldt County before legalization, because the truth is I did get to spend some time making records and getting in the studio and feeding some of my friends who had little studio spots that needed to get paid their $20 an hour. And I would get behind that. And a lot of the, you know, when you say like, the people who were able to put on the shows. They were the ones who were getting down dirty. You know what I mean? They were working hard, playing hard, and making sure artists were getting fed. You know, that's when, you know, there was a heyday for that, and hopefully it'll come back again. You know, with what's happening in this movement now. You know, when you think about, you know, what I have going on with Fatbull and the moves that we're making, there's the other groups that are doing things. It's like
Hip Hop Congress.
You know, the Hip Hop Congress, we're starting to look at grant funding, finding legitimate ways to start programs for children.
Dope.
You know what I mean? I mean, even going door to door with a farm program, a yard garden program, and offering to send someone to grow a garden in your yard. If you're not that kind of, will share the bounty with you and everyone in your neighborhood.
That is super.
You know what I mean? Think about that, man. Like, those are stuff I dream about. You know what I mean? I mean, people wonder what I'm doing, and I always make the joke. I'm like, yeah, I kind of like that. Everyone thinks I'm just baked and chilling, just like whatever. I'm like, nah, I'm over here. I'm working.
Yes.
Trust me, we're working. You know, right? We're having meetings every week, 2-hour meetings. You know, in trying to raise funds to teach all elements of hip hop. That's what the Hip Hop Congress does.
I love that.
Is that we specifically are focused on finding ways that the elements of hip hop can show education in the youth and adults and bring light to the street. You know, and it's already happening. Like the Friday night market. You know, it's just like that was the happening.
Yep.
It was pretty amazing. You know, Humble Rockers were there, a bunch of MCs were there, and the place was bustling. It looked like we were in Venice Beach. It was a huge circle around artists getting down, and it was really a beautiful sight to see. And all the years that I've lived here, it was really great to see that in downtown Eureka and Old Town. Streets are closed, and people are getting down and dirty, and it was super fun. It was really great to watch.
Shout out to Eureka Friday Night Markets for embracing hip hop and bringing hip hop out to these events. You know what I mean? Because that is exposing a lot of people. It was even just last night. Shout out to Mo down at Black Humboldt. They had a black cabaret show, and you know, all of our friends were down there, you know, performing. So it's we need that kind of thing. We need more people embracing the artists that are out here making this culture. You know what I mean?
Even with the Canifest, you know, the Canifest were, you know, Dead Prez is a headliner. That says a lot, you know. And it's like, okay, they're bringing back some OGs, you know, who are talking about extremely important messages, and you know, and they talk about the food, you know what I mean, which is great.
Be healthy, y'all. Yeah,
you know, see, they're a great example because Dead Prez been on that stuff.
Those sweets,
exactly. They've been on that, and I think Dead Prez might be one of the most popular groups that has not nonstop been walking around with their fist up. And if you ask Dead Prez how commercially successful they think they are, they're going to tell you, come on, man, we're barely eating off of this probably. Compare us to the people, the other legends of our era who are out here who have been in a different lane than them. They've been in that lane where they're seriously talking about, like, they're carrying Panther traditions forward, you know?
I mean, listen to their song, I'm an African, on the front, the Get Free. Like, that's one of my favorite beats of all time, just generally, you know what I mean? I like making beats like that. So
one thing I want to make sure.
But that story is real, you know?
Oh, yeah.
You know?
One thing I want to make sure to be understood for what I think is really valuable about this podcast and these traditions in general is that whether you know us or remember us or not, you're standing on our shoulders. If you're doing what we do when we're gone, you're standing on our shoulders, and we're standing on the shoulders of the people who inspired us. And so if you don't learn about us and you forget us and let us disappear into history, you're missing a part of yourself, and your foundation will be weaker, you know, where you're trying to stand. So what, and I mean, I don't mean you, I'm saying to them, you know, to the people that are going to be standing where we're standing, doing what we're doing when we're gone. If they don't remember us, then a part of what they're doing is missing, and they'll be standing on shakier ground. So what you're doing with this podcast, and what I hope we're able to do with these stories and memories that we've been able to recount and feel good about, is that people are more able to remember who set the stage for them to be standing on it, you know. I mean that symbolically, but also quite literally. You know, in my lifetime, I've literally built 2 stages that fools stand on and do this ceremony. You know what I mean?
With wood, with trees that were milled on your own property.
Yeah,
that fell down due to storms and other
Yeah,
things, right?
adverse circumstances. A very hip hop's thing to mill the trees that burned in a fire into a stage to stand. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I try and be hip hop in everything. You know, because when you listen to someone like KRS-One, not necessarily in his music, though he does talk about this, but in his literature and his writings and his interviews and his like more scholarly presentations and stuff that he does like that, he gets much deeper into these layers of history and spirituality and metaphysics and everything that are all intertwined in our reality, and how hip hop is just this particular creative vehicle that came around under a particular set of circumstances, you know. So kids, remember, old man Hathaway reminded you, know your elders, know who they are, know about what they did, and keep their name alive, because you'll be stronger for that. The people that are standing where you're at when you're gone, they'll do that for you. This is our continuum, you know.
I have an important thing to say about that exact thing. You know, the elders, you know, I've toured with different groups. I've played with different people. Bill Summers from the Headhunters, some of the Frank Zappa members, you know, different groups. Sheun Kuti, right? Fela Kuti's son, Egypt 80. I was in the group Afro Massive, and we did some dates with them, and you know, we had to let them use all our gear because they didn't have any equipment, you know, because they just flew here, you know what I mean? So they don't have gear. They're on tour, and we're, as support, we'll, you know, bring the gear, and we'll be the opening band. And every single one of those groups would say the same thing. You know, it's really important for us young bloods to be doing this music and understanding where it came from, because it's the only way that it's going to last. That's right. And if you don't know your foundation, then you're not going to know where it came from, and then it may not last. I mean, we're in a different age now, so it's, again, this is the interesting space where technology, like some of my own bandmates are like, yeah, oh, when I was in 8th grade, you know, and Facebook was, I'm like, what? You know what I mean? Like, whoa, I don't even, like, I can't, I'm like in 8th grade. I think we might have had our first answering machine, and I think the three-way calling might have happened.
Bro.
Three-way, I had in television. You know what I mean? Like, you know, so it's really interesting to think about. You know, so not only is it important to carry on the music of your elders, it's understanding, like when I think about who I'm inspired by, let's just use Object Heavy. I hate to keep going to that, but our music is very specifically 1973 Cadillac Soul. Our album, our record we put out is very specifically something that you would listen to and be like, how did I miss that? You know what I mean? So it's that sound, transistor sound, thanks to Kelly Finnegan and in the Transistor Studio. But it's not listening to who your friends listen to. It's not who your idols listen to. Who did your favorite rapper's parents listen to that they grew up in the house with, or their grandparents? Who did your grandparents listen to when you were 6 years old, getting your first taste of music? How come I'm so deeply into the sounds of like 1973 and what the Headhunters were doing, and some of that fusion, that early, you know, in that dance floor barbecue jazz funk music that was happening in the 60s? It's because I watched Sesame Street, and you know, and that music, there was just in the background, there was heavy funk fusion music happening all the time. Stevie Wonder was playing in the damn Sesame Street in the middle of the street when I was 4 years old. So you know what I mean? So when you think about that, it's like, okay, now as an adult, as someone who writes music, I'm trying to pay attention to who did Stevie Wonder listen to, and who does his parents listen to, because that's where the true inspiration goes, and that's how deep the rabbit hole goes when it comes to the foundations of music. You know what I mean? And that is something that is more important. It's like, forget who I grew up listening to. Who did I grow up listening to, and who did the people I grew up listening to listen to when they were little kids in my age?
So shout out Hip Hop Humble for keeping that continuum intact. That's what I feel is the most important part of this work. The promotional part, helping cats get seen, you know, helping the scene as it is now grow is a function of what you're doing also. But that protection of the continuum, it's super important and super sacred. I appreciate you for that. And I'm humbled, honored to be here, bro. Yeah,
hey,
shout out.
The honor's all mine. I really appreciate what you guys have done to lay that groundwork for this community, because as somebody who exists out here running shows, you know, trying to help artists out here, you know, I'm the type of person where I'm always going to be giving respect to the people that, you know, have done it before us. You know what I mean? And so I think that that's something that people need to see that in hip hop. the influencers giving respect to who has laid it down, because again, like I think that's just whether it's just gets worse over time or it's just worse with like the newer generations. There's this want to not give respect to the people that have done it, because it's just like, well, as time passes, I just talk to kids and it's like, well, who? Oh well, you know what I mean. But you can't do that. Again, it goes back to what you said. You have a less strong foundation when you're not realizing who set it up to allow you to even walk on the lane that you're walking. You know what I mean? Like, you don't even realize where you're walking until you realize who's walked it before you.
Well, and there's something to be said about that. Like, we can go back to like Potluck, for example. Now, the Freestyle Kings was a short-lived group. Granted, we broke some ground. We were a live band. We were singing like, weed, medical. Our mission was medical 215, Prop 215 legit, people not the plant. Potluck had much more commercial viability. They were dope. Their tracks, like, they had a crew. They were, it was an easier package because they had, less people. If Josh and One Ton were going out, with a DJ, that's a way more attractive package when you think about finances. You know what I mean? You think about from that standpoint. Yeah. So, and as those guys popped, it was like, One Ton was like, these guys, and Oli was part of that, we're looking to put other cats on, which did, do a lot. And as we were in different lanes, and once the Freestyle Kings broke up, I was working with Garth, and Garth was always cool at Potluck. We were all cool and working together in those times that you're talking about too, especially in the mid 2000s area. Substab was born through all of that, and Jay the Sarge was out doing stuff with, so it was just important that today there are promoters, there are venue owners, there are people all up and down the coast looking to see what's going on in Humboldt, because they've been doing this for years. And why? It's because there were cats that were going on the road and making noise. Potluck was touring up and down the coast. They were starting, after a while, they were touring everywhere. That really made other cats hungry. You know what I mean? And I was starting to pop in a different lane, but we were like a little bit more on the jam scene, and our bands were, I was more interested in making beats. Doing the shows is one thing, but like, I love making beats and working with the MCs. That was one way that I could stay young as a producer, getting older, working with the younger generation. And so speaking of paving the way, it's like those younger groups that were active in the, let's just say before my time, between the mid 90s and 2005, there was a specific path laid for the movement, based on groups going out and touring and doing shows and getting together with people from Chico and Fresno and Redding, right? It's still happening now, right? Juice and those cats are working with the group from Redding. You know what I mean? It's like that's what's up. Once you pop in your town, then you can start to venture out a little bit. Now Humboldt kids can be popping in Redding and in Ashland, and you know what I mean, and in Chico and in Davis and in Sacramento and San Francisco and Ukiah and Willits and then Mendo. And you got Greener Fields, you got Mendo Dope. You got to be getting down with these cats. And there's and there's Marvelous, and there's all these cats that are up in Oregon, Free Creatures currently, and there's the Southern Ashland or Southern Oregon hip hop movement happening. And it's important for people to recognize that we're surrounded by it. The movement is real, and it's been popping for a long time, but now it's actually starting to take form. So it's really fun to watch what's happening to Humboldt hip hop. Like, there's a new energy happening, and there's a lot of hunger happening, and a lot of people are wanting to put singles out and do videos, and they want to get on the pod and they want to get working. And it's like, really, back in the day, it was just us just trying to make some noise, and not that many people listening,
And I'm glad you bring that up, though, Swizz. Another thing about it is these cats got to make sure that they're networking. That's something that I can't, after having been involved in the scene for about 2 years and seeing what goes on with the artists, with the events, I'm going out to all these events. Case is going out to all these events now. There's a few, Ian, shout out to Rough Ian, he's going out to all the events, ATG. There's a few heads that are coming out to every event. but you got to be networking out there. Like nobody's gonna come to you. The homie Bub from Sacramento with the Highways crew, he said it. He said it right. He was like, nobody's gonna come and like introduce themselves to you. You have to go and introduce yourself to them. You have to go. You have to come to these shows that are existing, that are running in Humboldt County, and network. Like there's this thing now, just for instance, with me. Like I mean, I'm running an Instagram account called Hip Hop Humboldt. So and I'm running it like I feel like it kind of should be ran now, where it's putting a spotlight on people in Humboldt County. So the MCs in this area, you know, any given month, I'm getting like between 10 and 12 people like hitting me up, like, how do I get on these shows and everything like that. Right. And the thing about it is, it's like, I'm not even seeing them out though. And that's the thing. And I'm telling them is you got to come out and network. Like it's the most simple thing in the world.
The best way, you know, not to interject, but, you know, again, I come from the musician standpoint. You know, over the years, we've put on jam nights, right? In Muddy Waters Coffee Company, it used to be what's now Northtown Coffee, used to be Muddy Waters Coffee. And we would do the hip hop lounge. It was instrumental hip hop with Pete Ciotti, right? Drummer from Nucleus, and Nucleus was Subsab, right? That was the band that rocked them. But we would create a space, you know, when people would come out, and then we started doing the different forms of what we called the Get Down, right, a few years ago, which led to Object Heavy. What happens when you network, when you show up to other people's shows, and when you show up to get on a track and not leave right after, and when you do all that, and, you know, and this is no disrespect to anyone, because I've done it too, and I do it more now than ever, and maybe that's my age, like I'm just all over the place, man. I'm on tour, and I'm like, and I'm also trying to level up our business. So yeah, I try not to give excuses of why I don't show up as much as I used to.
You're busy, man.
You know, I'm really trying.
You're not in build mode right now. Like you're in operate mode. When you're in build mode, if you're not out there being humble and supporting cats, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not that you're not always trying to build steam and that doesn't take constant work, but you know what I mean? Like you're not just got here. You're not like some hungry new dude.
Nah, you're right.
Like,
I'm still in the studio making beats currently for with young cats, and like wanting to make, you know, and I'm still trying to put bands together to back MCs. I'm still put on, you know, I'm trying to put a show on in December 2nd, right, at the theater, which is going to feature 19 MCs backed by the band. I mean, nice. Like, yeah, so you're right. You know, I'm working.
Yeah, you're building platforms. But like you create platforms for people to shine on.
And that's the point. So that's the sticking point of what you just said, is that, you know, the get downs, when musicians just show up, whether they're going to play or not, or they're not really sure, maybe I'm going to get up for one, or, you know, what's really going to happen. It just creates a vibe of wanting to be around, and people can feel that you're hungry and feel that you're interested in actually being there and want to get on the stage. When you're standing there, man, when I show up, I have some friends who will clown me, like, man, you'll just sit in with anyone, huh? I'm like, yeah. Well, you'll even ask, huh? Like, yeah, shit, totally. You could totally say no to me. That's cool. I'm not insulted. I'm not trying to, you know, mess up your stage. I'm just saying that you guys have played 3 songs and there's a keyboard sitting there and no one's playing. And I don't know, man, like, what the fuck? Let's get down. You know what I mean? That is why I've built a reputation the way I have. That's why people are like, oh, Swizz is going to show up, man. He's actually going to learn our beats. He's actually, you know, he's going to bring a crew. Like, I'm reliable because why? Because I, you know, for years I showed up, and that's, you know, and so not to talk about me, but showing up, if you want to be down, you got to show up, yes, right? Sir. You said it's like one of my favorite things to say. You don't show up, you can't really be down. Like,
once you start actually building platforms and the contributions that you're making are actually bigger than yourself, you can change, your requirements change. You know, it's like the stuff that you've created for other people, that is support. And you've worked so hard and done so much that you support the scene when you ain't even standing there. You don't even have to be in the room, and your support is still present because your work, you know. But one thing that the internet has not changed about the game, for all the things about the game that it has completely altered, the one thing that hasn't changed is that, and this is for artists right now, there's big artists who got hella clicks, hella views, hella fans, but ain't nobody showing up at their shows, right? Like some of the biggest streamers and biggest numbers cats right now are having trouble getting people through the doors at their shows, but Wu-Tang is selling out on tour with Nas or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, yo, there's something to be said about that. And I think the core of what he's talking about is that until you're one of the people who have put in so much work that you're actually contributing to platforms that other people stand on, like figuratively and straight up literally stand on, you know, then you need to be there. And I really like what you said about how even just your nervousness and your own just little emotional energy in the room is a contribution to the environment. And you help feed that magnetism. There's a magnetism that people want to be hungry for. And when they feel other people in the room that are hungry that way too, like even the scientists now can show how our emotions tune to each other and they amplify like that.
When an artist walks in the room and I'm on the stage, a number of things happen. Now I'm going to precurse by saying I'm always going to get on stage and give it all. I'm always going to leave it on the stage. But when someone walks in the room, I'm suddenly like, all right,
yep.
Strap in, man. Yep. Just make sure that you don't fuck around. Don't be veering off at your homie you haven't seen in a while. Like, oh, hey, man, I just missed a note. You know what I mean? There's a time and a place, and you're right. So what happens when, and I've been told by close people in my life, hey, it's probably good for you to go. A girl would be like, yo, you should go. I'm like, I know, and I have this anxiety, and I'm tired, and I've just been running around all day, and I finally sat down, and I'm like, but I gotta go do this. It's like, yeah, no, and she reminded me that the importance of me showing up, whether I like it or not, is what the feeling of the people whose show it is, what happens when you show up. Mm-hmm. So when David Haney walks in the room to a hip hop show, most everyone in the room, whether they express it or not, their whole game changed because they want to be better. Yep. Just because you walked in the room.
Mm-hmm. Love that.
So when Oli walks in the room,
straighten your shit out.
When people who have been doing it I use the word respect lightly, not to say I don't respect people. It's just like, you don't need to be throwing that word around.
Agreed.
People can be nice and cool and respectful in public. Doesn't mean they're respecting the conglomerate in the game. You know what I mean? Like, what did Dre say? Right? All these youngsters and now what's it was us now they're calling us busters. The Watcher track.
Yeah.
Yep. I'm missing what it actually was, but it's like it's like, how do you not become a buster? You know what I mean? I don't really know, but I'm 52 and I'm still making tracks with heads here in town, and the longevity.
Winning best musician in the local newspaper. You know what I mean? Band is the best local band. I mean, there's work that goes into that. There's networking, there's time that you've put in over these years. You know what I mean? And so I really feel like I feel like Humboldt County, because you have a following. You know what I mean? Like, people know you, and I think that I feel like the county's tapping in to what you're doing. You know what I mean? And so that's a good thing, because when people see success, and especially at music, you know what I mean? That's not something that happens all the time. You know what I mean? And so with what you've done, you've not only found success in, like, a lot, I want to say, I don't know numbers, percentages, you know what I mean? But like, a lot of the times people will find success with one thing, right? Like, let's just say, for instance, like the only thing you ever did was Object Heavy, you know what I mean? But you've done more than that, you know what I mean? So people are tapping in with you. They know that you are keeping the pulse on the scene, on the county, you know what I mean, on the artists, you know what I mean? And so you like a lot of the work that I've done, you've been doing that, growing the community and the scene and the artists, you know what I mean? It's just, it takes a different form. It's one of those forms that I think a lot of people don't see. They just come to the shows and see like the shows, right? But there's so much behind the scenes that you've done to support artists, the sound over the years, you know what I mean? But getting artists opportunities on venues, you know what I mean? Giving those opportunities, like that's the scene, like that's hip hop. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I may not have, made, tons of money on certain shows in the Red Fox. And it's like, I don't know, we didn't make you pay for your sound, and we weren't going to make you pay to open. I mean, and that's, again, no disrespect to anyone who does that. It's just, I just didn't think that was a lane that needed to exist. I am not paying to play anywhere. No. I'd rather work hard enough to be worth to be on that stage. If you don't want to put me on, cool. Because I'm going to be over here filling a room.
Right.
It's
Right.
like, and you know what? And you're right. And today, we played at the Crisp Lounge, and it's a new thing, and no, there wasn't anybody there, but people who, that's when you're like, you have fans, you have a following. It's like, man, I promote the shit out of something, and then sometimes nobody shows up, and I don't take that personally anymore. That's just how it goes. You know what I mean? And I'm old enough to know that that's how it goes. We go on tour. I don't look at one bad show. I look at 11 shows and what the gross was that, and what the experience was, and was that one bad show good in that the 17 people there, 3 of those people booked this thing in the summer that's going to fetch us $5,000. So you go to those fucking spots you don't want to go to sometimes. You go show up and play in front of no one. And you know what you do? You act like there's a million people in the room. Because otherwise, those 3 people, you never know. I'm telling you, I've gotten booked some big shit. I've gotten taken into a studio and paid handsomely just because I kept my shit together when playing in front of nobody. And there's a lot to that. You get up and you're like, all right, I'm set. And it's like, you look whack. I don't care how good you are. You look whack right now. You want to be sorry, I'm going to break shit. You want to be a professional, you have to show up, and you have to get down with it. So
shout out to Chavo, the homie Kai's J. He's the homie that said it, whether it's 5 or 500.
Yeah, man. Yeah, and you got to show up for people, and you have to do community things. Yeah. You have to do a free show every now and then. I'm telling you, we go to the School of Rock in Vacaville, and they pay us to play for them. And we have built friendships with the parents and some of these kids. One of the kids groups all graduated from School of Rock and have their own band now, and are opening for us in Winters next Friday as a band playing soul and funk music. School of Rock in Vacaville. It's dope. The owners there are friends of ours were like, do you realize that we are now adding a whole repertoire of music because of Object Heavy? Not just, we certainly didn't start any Al Green and any, you know what I mean? Right. We didn't start Aretha Franklin. But we did something to those kids, and now these kids have their own band, and they're not playing heavy metal covers, and they're not, there's a place for all that, but that's usually what's happening in School of Rock in a lot of places. But I'm guessing that in each city, and I don't know School of Rock very well, so, but they do amazing things is what they do. They turn kids into believers of themselves, and so it's just important. So they booked us for three different shows, and we were like, hey, we're looking for a gig. We have a day off. We have to be in Tahoe at noon. What do you think? And she's like, well, we can't pay you, but we are doing this benefit, and we'll get you a couple hotel rooms and get you some dinner. And so you know what? Our option was, on a logistical level, it made sense. There was no paying gig, but we were all super excited that we could go and play for School of Rock. They put us up for the night, and we just had to get up early and leave super early to Tahoe that next day. But it was like we went and played for free. And you know what? And that changed their feeling forever. They love us because we went and showed up. I've played countless shows for free. I'll always try to do 3 or 4 events for free. Someone says, well, it's a benefit. It's like, I understand that, but benefits from nonprofits have budgets. So like, I'm part of a nonprofit and have been before. So let's just be clear about that. Like, don't treat the musicians any less. Don't treat the artists less just because you'd rather put the money into something else. You know what I mean? We understand that you need to raise money for your cause. If you ask anyone, I'll be the first to tell you that. I'm not trying to help you raise awareness for your cause. I'm trying to raise money for your cause. So get a sponsor to make sure Hap Hathaway can get on the stage, and that way the money from the thing can actually go towards your benefit.
Mr. Hathaway got to eat too, man.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, so there's a whole system that comes with being a good artist. There's more to it. You know what I mean? Being dope is great. Being attentive, present, and on the scene, and a contributor, like a lot of these groups we talk about, like, I don't get to say this much, but it's like Oli, when he's on the scene, he's on the scene. When he's behind the scene, he's behind the scenes. You may not know what magic he's doing or who he's working with when he's quiet. And there's folks that just aren't around. I mean, am I proud of Humboldt hip hop? Yeah. Have I ever left? No. I'm like, I love it. I stand behind everyone who's doing it, like, you know, the way we connected. It's like, yo, Hip Hop Humboldt, what's up with Hip Hop Humboldt? You're like, oh, I'm just a dude. This is what I do. I love hip hop. I love reporting about hip hop. And we were like, and you were like, wait a minute, we should be reporting. I'm going to call Knack One and interview him. You know what I mean? And suddenly, and like, that's exciting to see where we're at right now. How many episodes have you done since we had a phone conversation? You know what I mean? Like not to say, you know, just it's exciting to know from the moment we connected to know what's happening now. And there's a whole movement that you are like, you're revered as a highly respected brother. You know what I mean? And you are holding it down, and you have your finger on the pulse of Humboldt hip hop based on you committing yourself to this, which is like, I mean, it takes a lot of energy. You have a ton of work to do after we stop talking.
Times 50 episodes.
Yeah. Yep, it adds up. But it's all about the love of the craft. And I think that's, you know, that's what delineates the hobbyists from, you know what I mean, the people that really want to get involved and actually be a part of it. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to have to put in work. You're going to have to give your time for free. Like that, like you said, you got to do free shows. You got to give your time for free to build that. But then there's also, like you're saying, there is the point where, you know, you're no longer in build mode, like you're talking about with Swizz. You know what I mean? There's a point where, like, he built, like, Swizz has built everything, like we were talking about. Like, Swizz did that, you know what I mean? And so now it's now in, you know, whether it's maintenance or just, you know, that growth mode, just because it's constantly growth, you know. If
always
you ever
maintenance too.
It's always maintenance with the growth, you know what I mean? Because at that point, when you no longer want to grow, you're out of it. That's right. When you retire or whatever is right. And that's the cool thing about hip hop is that I've talked to my boy co-host the podcast, Albert, you know what I mean? And I'm just talking to him about stuff. And I'm like, you know, you're growing into, you know, the next steps and doing the next things with it. And like, you don't have to really, you know, with like hip hop, you can grow into, you know, putting on shows and rather than just like you being the star and doing a show, then you're creating shows and creating, you know, giving people the mic, you know what I mean? And like the progression of it. So there's really not ever an end where you can just be like an MC. If you want to retire, great. But if you don't ever want to retire from hip hop, you can always support the community. Shout out to what OEB's doing out there. You know what I mean? He's born and raised in Humboldt County and still to this day.
Perfect example of someone who's in it and has been in it the entire time. It's, you know, not everyone knows that, you know what I mean? I don't see him all the time. But
To quote James, he would say, when you're counting pounds of plums, it always starts with one.
That's right. But Blow Some is shows up, and he consistently shows up, and he knows when
and
to
he's
break.
putting his guys on. You know, what I mean? That's his focus.
Yeah, that's a big deal. You know what I mean? And yeah.
And that's why Blow Some, you know, is a force in Humboldt County. You know, whether it's people in Humboldt County wanting to do shows or people coming through. Shout out to True Justice. You were just at the True Justice. Yeah. You're hosting the True Justice.
True's a real one.
Yeah, you know, like he knows the area. He knows. Blow Some, you invite Blow Some now, and they're gonna give you a good show, and they're gonna bring people. You know, they're gonna create a good environment. You know, shout out to Devious D and the homie Pook out there. You know what I mean?
Devious, man. Speaking of old school,
he goes
he's gonna be one of the next ones.
Yeah, he's OG.
He was one of the first ones, probably.
Yep, for sure. Because I met him early on when Parton Lane was happening. Parton Lane Click was Potluck. It was like very beginnings. Like, you know, like I was just getting to know these guys. Like, you know, and these guys were already like recording. They were doing stuff with Absolute. You know, they had a little studio going on. Like when the Freestyle Kings happened, we would go over in Potluck's house, and it was just a crew over there. And Devious was always over there, and there was a whole crew.
And he's still holding it down out there, man. Just not last night, but the night before at the Jam, he was on a show with Highway, Knack One, 2 Tank. You know what I mean? Rock Slang was on the show. That's like an all-star show right there. You know, it really is. But
thanks to Hip Hop Humboldt, people understand that. People know that history. You know.
Hey, I think it's important for the people to keep it in mind. You know what I mean? No matter what, you know. And it's one thing for just the regular folks in the community, the audience, you know, the fans. That's one thing. But once you step over into that realm of you're a part of, you know, you're creating in the community, I just want to say this, you do yourself a disservice by not recognizing what's happened around you. You know, you really, where are you at that point? You know what I mean? If you don't know who's done things as a business, you know, when you start a business, you got to start up, you do a SWOT analysis, strength, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. You have to figure out who's out there, what they're doing. This is business. You know what I mean?
Who are we competing with?
Exactly. Who's been in the arena, who's, you know, making conversions, sales, making money, you know what I mean? It's the same thing in hip hop, because no matter what, unfortunately, we're all a part of, you know, this economic system that we're a part of, and we have to, you know, capitalism devalues art big time, you know what I mean? If our economic system valued art like it should be, artists would be getting paid a whole lot more, you know what I mean? And I'm talking about at the local levels, you know what I mean? Like, you got the big folks out there at the major record labels making big money and everything like that. But, you know, the people that are creating scenes on a local level, keeping your local scene moving, those people are underappreciated and underpaid 99% of the time. You know what I mean? And so we're all a part of this. And so it creates this situation where we're all kind of just like fighting for whatever crumbs that exist on a local level, even if there's exposure, even if there's, like, you know, media and everything like that. And so people have learned to not work together. You know what I mean? But hip hop has always been people coming together to have a good time. You know what I mean? And people have lost that aspect of it. It's, you know, it's that ego, and it's those, you know, ego aspects that come into so much play. But when you got people out here that have been doing it, like we go back to Devious D, you know what I'm saying? He's been putting in so many hours for Humboldt County hip hop. He's gonna be one of the next dudes. It was Case I was talking with Case a few weeks ago, and Case was like, "Yeah, man, you definitely got to get Devious on." You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I'm gonna be probably recording with him in September.
He's old school, man. Yeah, he's one of the first people I met just through the Potluck Crew.
And like I said, still out there doing it. You know what I mean? So it's just so good to see the people with the skills, the talent, that have built themselves, that have built the brands out there, still going. There's longevity, and there's something to be said about that, because not everybody has, let me tell you what, not everybody has the longevity of BSE. You know what I'm saying? Out here, you know, there's some crews out here. There's the Fat Bowl crew. There's BSC. You know what I mean? Eli and Mika Son are doing what they're doing. You know what I mean? Rockslang's got his crew. You know, North Bay Riders have been everything. You know, they've been doing things. You know what I'm saying? But I mean, there's, again, goes back to what you said. There's only so many crews. You know what I mean? So just for me personally, as a person that's archiving it, talking to all the artists and everything like that, I just want to encourage everybody to come out to each other's shows. Like, there's no need for it to be clicked up where, you know, and I definitely get it. You know what I mean? Hey, I can't come out to every single show. A lot of us have kids. A lot of us have everybody's got jobs. I really don't know anybody in Humboldt County that's like eating off of Humboldt County hip hop. Maybe there's a head or two out there, you know what I'm saying? But I've even talked to like Highway, who's got numbers, you know what I'm saying? You know, so I mean, it's, you know, so we're all in the same boat. We're all looking for the same thing, for the progress and the benefit of Humboldt County hip hop. So we got to come out to each other's shows. You know what I mean? Like, it just cannot be this whole, you know, because we got the Hip Hop Congress out there now, you know, that's trying to bring cliques together, that's trying to bring people together along the lines of just hip hop. You know what I mean? So we need people getting involved with that. We need people coming out to those shows. And again, networking. I say it's the simplest thing, you know what I mean? And we're all at different social levels. Some people have, you know, social anxiety. I mean, I used to have social anxiety, you know what I mean? And slowly you start coming.
Currently.
I still do.
People don't even know, right?
Yeah. I think everybody does to an extent, you know what I mean? And it's just like how much you kind of let it get to you, right? And so, like, you know, once you start to come out and talk with people, you know, it's gonna work those muscles.
I really think hip hop, I owe my progress with those kind of problems in a great way to hip hop, because you have to get out of your comfort zone to talk to people, to organize the business part. And then, of course, just being in front of a room full of people you ain't never seen before in your life. And you're going to say the shit you wrote down when you're like, how I'm going to express myself for the generations to be listened to forever after I'm gone. And I never seen none of you people before, but I'm going to say that shit right now. There's a special kind of guts that takes, you know? And yeah, I know that in a lot of ways it's helped me become a more focused confident person in general, and the way that affects the rest of your life to like feel dope about yourself it can't be measured, you know what I mean? And for me, like I said, going even back to that first time, man, I spit that Rakim in front of the homies, and they, you know what, actually I'll go back further. There was one before that, there was a Fat Boys record that come out that had it had this song on it called Protect Yourself. And it was about safer sex, basically. You know, it was about like using safe sex. And I was like, I must have been about 10 or 11 years old or some shit when that came out. But me and the homie wanted to impress these girls out on the schoolyard. So they trade off. They like, two of the dudes rock back and forth. They like trade off. So we memorized the two parts, and like we played two of the Fat Boys, and we dropped that shit out on the schoolyard. You know what I mean? And everyone was like, ah, that shit right there makes you feel dope about yourself. Like it gives you a special energy. And not to say that you should conflate rapping good with being a good person, but there's so much out there pushing us down and making us feel shitty and making us feel tired and depressed and unsure of ourselves. So any little thing that can spark that feeling of like, oh shit, I'm dope, and people think I'm dope. Like, you don't want to get strung out on that shit. It can turn into crack on you real quick, but we all need a little bit of it. Or you're deficient in something that's very important, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's what Hip Hop Congress is really about, you know, is implementing programs for kids it allows them to not only use their voice in a social way, whether it's justice or, you know, what they're dealing with at home. It helps them be creative and show them how to deal with their adversities through through creativity, and even, you know, maybe show them how hip hop can actually bring a life and a career, you know, outside of just getting better and having confidence and getting rid of your social anxiety by getting on the mic. And, you know, I call, you know, my keyboard is my security blanket. Like I'm on stage and I'll just sit there and I'll talk to everyone all day like this, you know, and then as soon as I get off the stage, I'm like hiding in the back. It's like, you'd be like, he's all standoffish. It's like, nah,
Nah, you're not standoffish at all, Swizz. You're a people person, man.
Yeah, no, I work hard to push the anxiety away. You know what I mean? Now I do like people, so that helps.
It's just another example of the power. That's the power of the craft, really. If you think about it, it's like something important enough to you to be like, nah, I'm gonna push through that. I'm gonna compartmentalize that. I'm gonna learn how to deal with that. You know what I mean? Like, what motivates you to do shit like that? Like not working at McDonald's or something, not doing some shit that you're not inspired by. You'll never get some
you
hunger.
Just don't want to be doing whatever it is. You know?
It ain't going to give you that feeling where like, you know, what parts of myself do I need to make better so I can be doper at this thing? And whatever that is, it don't even have to be rapping. It's whatever you're into that you're honing as a contribution to our culture, because our culture isn't just working for food and shelter. You know, that's the foundation of human life, but that's not what culture is. Culture is what we do in the mean and in between time of trying to keep food, clothing, shelter, medicine, energy. What we do in the tween time of that is what culture really is, you know?
Well, our connection from soul to body, you know what I mean? Our bodies are being kept busy, right? Our bodies are just doing stuff to keep busy while our souls are doing all the work and holding it down, because our souls are good no matter what choices we make, like literally. You know? So it's our bodies being kept busy so our souls can actually, you know, can communicate through our art and our craft, you know, which gets us to this higher place. Like when you rap about something 7 years ago and realize that all you want to do is grow food in Ecuador, you know what I mean? That says a lot. You know, it's like, you know, we have vision. We just sometimes don't see it when the ideas come up. But, you know, we're creating reality by speaking, and that's been proven through quantum physics. You know what I mean? You can, if there's a book called Messages from Water, which is Japanese scientists who would take photos of water molecules frozen, and he's the one who proved through quantum physics that you can create reality, because if you write the word love on the glass of water and you take a picture of it, it turns into this beautiful snowflake. And if you put hate or anything on there, it just makes it all look all just muddled and just fucked up. So it just you know, so we are creating our realities. When I wrote something down on November 30th 2001 about what I thought would be an amazing, you know, future of hip hop and food and all this other stuff, you know, and looking back at years later, and I'm reading it, you know, my 10-year, 20-year plan to do music and art and culture in Humboldt. And that was in 2001. And I realized that I wrote that on November 30th, which is not only the day my mother passed away 19 years later, but it's also Julia's birthday. And most of what I wrote down has to do with a lot of what we're talking about, which is music, food, and the desire to create a community based on artistry, because we're the natural resource. Humboldt County boasts the most artists per capita in the state, I think. And so, yeah, where's the funding for that?
Right.
Cool. Let's go. Like there's a whole bunch of natural resources around here who are very hungry and are creating a reality of their own that's based on foundations of being able to eat. Right? To bring it back around.
Yeah, man.
Yep, there's certain things we
The
all,
original ceremony. That's the original
That's right.
ceremony.
Yeah, breaking bread.
I think it all flows back to what you were talking about, though, Hap. When people come together for whether it's a party, event, you know what I mean? Like you're conjuring energy, and when there's somebody on the microphone and there's a DJ making music and everything like that, and dancing, and we really forget that we're so displaced from our former lives and what used to happen to us, let's just say maybe 1,000, 2,000 years ago. But like a lot of these same things were happening, just look different, right? You know
Well
what I mean?
said.
Instruments were different. What was being said was different.
They've been doing hip hop for thousands of years.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. Yeah. It's all about those vibrations, and I think it's so interesting. It's one of those corollaries between music and religion. Just for instance, like there's I forgot what the name of the building is. It's on Boona Street in Eureka. And so it's like the Center for like Spiritual Living, or it's a small church, and the religion, I went to it once to check it out. And the religion was based on this book by a gentleman, and it was just talking about how all religions of the past there's these certain themes on a scientific level that are the same throughout. And so there's power in people congregating, there's power in music and vibration, and there's power in people dancing. And you know what I mean? So those same things like that. And then it goes into those things create like a religion, you know what I mean? And so hip hop is in a sense the same thing. Shout out to Dr. Oop, who's been on the pod, you know what I mean? He talked about like the cult of hip hop, you know what I mean? It's kind of like a religion in itself, where there's people that are really invested in it, you know what I mean? And
It ain't no culture if there ain't a cult, you know what I'm saying?
That's exactly right. There's got to be a few things that are like really held in high regard, you know what I mean? And you got to have people, like just for instance, again, shout out to the homie Ian, Rough Ian, you know what I mean? Like he's a real connoisseur of hip hop. Like he loves the craft, you know what I mean? And he does what he does, spending hours a day, just practicing and vocalizing and rapping, you know what I mean? Out of a love for the craft, you know what I mean? And so you find all kinds of different levels of people in that church, in the church of hip hop, right? Those people that are real, like, I don't want to say top level, but just the people that have ability, like Ian, you know what I mean? That actually then also respect the craft and the culture and everything going back in the history. And then you got all kinds of other people along the spectrum between somebody that's like I don't want to say paying reverence, but having respect for the culture and actually creating the craft, to people that may not be creating the craft and don't have as much respect for the culture. And there's going to be a lot of people in between, right? And so for me, I just really like that this podcast seems to have congregated a lot of people that are on that spectrum that, they've got a love for hip hop in their hearts, you know what I mean? Because there's a lot of people in Humboldt County like that. That's why it's been interesting to see, I think it's just kind of rural dynamics where hip hop, it's harder for hip hop to have a presence in rural areas, you know what I mean? And so that's why I'm really glad here where, again, going back to like what you're talking about, Swizz, we have a higher number of artists and a higher spend per capita compared to anywhere else in the country, right? So then it's great to see that in addition to that, all the art that happens here, there's hundreds of people that are making hip hop, that are involved with the hip hop scene, you know what I mean? And being, getting their creative energy out. So they're moving towards that, that spectrum of people can't see right now. I'm doing all these hand gestures that the gents can see right now. Anybody on the video can't see, but I'm just talking about that spectrum of people between the people that just come out to the shows, the audience that enjoy it, to the people that really, really care about the craft and can create the craft and even, care about what they're creating, You know what I mean? Like there that exists in Humboldt County, and it's beautiful to see. The Dr. Oops, you know what I mean? Like the Ians, you know what I mean? The Knack Ones, you know what I mean? Like come together in this community to for the benefit of hip hop in Humboldt County. You know what I mean? There have been the people that have been doing it, and the leaders, you know what I mean? Knack One's a leader out here. We talked about, you talked about how like KRS was talking about the different pillars of hip hop. See, Knack One, you come out to a Fat Bowl Cypher, and just about every Fat Bowl Cypher come out to, Knack One is talking about that. He's like, there's more than just four pillars. There's fashion, entrepreneurship, you know what I mean? Like there's those things out here. So we have those gems out here, and so it's been great to just have more visibility towards the people that are creating these things out here, and have the scene progress in this direction where there can be a hip hop Congress, where there can be people that have been involved with the hip hop scene. Shout out to Goldilocks, shout out to Zach Lehner, you know what I mean? He's an educator out here that has been promoting hip hop on that levels at the schools with the youth, you know what I mean? To the point where, when you got your kids taking to hip hop, whether it's they're going and seeing Rex with the Humboldt Rockers dance and they're emulating Rex, or going to one of his dance classes and learning how to break dance, you know what I mean? Or they come out to the Fat Bowl Cypher or these events that are happening out here and learning about it, you know what I mean? Like we need those pillars out here. Like without the exposure, like it was really like the pillars were out here definitely not getting the respect that they deserve. And I personally, I'm the type, I love hip hop to where I'm never going to feel like they get the respect that they deserve. But at least we're moving in that direction where there's more visibility, you know what I mean? People know about Dr. Oops workshop. Shout out to Dr. Oop and what he's doing, so it's all about reaching that critical mass, where again, in a rural area, it's hard for hip hop to get on, but there's going to be a point in time where, whatever media outlets exist out there, whether it's the Lost Coast Outpost or North Coast Journal, shout out to them for being one of the few media outlets to give hip hop space. Shout out to, Ian's brother, Colin Yayo, who works on the North Coast Journal. He's, done work to give hip hop space in Humboldt County. You know what I mean? Like we need more of that. But until there's going to be a critical mass point in time where there's a critical mass where they can't not report on hip hop. You know what I mean?
Well, in the meantime, we got Hip Hop Humboldt holding us down.
That's
and
true.
I really respect your ethic and your attitude about understanding protection of the heritage. One of my teachers, shout out Michael Two Feathers, Uncle Michael, I love you. He says they're with us all the time. The grandmas and grandpas are always around. It's just that we live in our bodies are built to experience only a certain part of the world, and they're always here, but they're watching us. And so when we stop and we acknowledge them and we sit, as he would say, when we sit in a circle together and pray with the drum, and sing, they listen. And if you are reverent, and if you're walking in a good way, as he would say, then they'll support you and they'll help you and protect you. If you forget them, if you disrespect them, they're aware of it and they won't be there for you, So I might seem a little bit weird, right?
Not at all.
But
that's truth.
There's that's what he says, and I believe that, that resonates with me. That idea that somehow interdimensionally and energetically we don't really go anywhere. The things we do, like the pebble in the pond, it just keep radiating in all directions, and that never really stops. Just things radiate into each other and something new happens, and then they so I want to send that respect to you and to the Humboldt hip hop movement podcast for understanding the importance of that, not just to help people build what they're doing now, but to help protect what was there before, because that influences the now and the next now after that now,
I I also resonate with that when people pass on from the physical, they're still around. And something that I draw from in here and feel and have read somewhere before, and I can't remember where, but we all have a voice in our heads, right? We're all silent.
I have several.
Right? If you're silent for a second, right then and there, my voice in my head was being like, hey, don't sit there for too long because you're on a video and you're in the middle of a podcast or at the end of a podcast, right? Now, we can't really tell if we can hear that voice or not, but we know it's happening. When you're sitting there looking at someone or something, and your voice is saying something, it's there. So when our physical beings are taken from us, well, where does that voice go? There'd be no reason for that voice to go unless it's a ghost of the conscience. You know what I mean? It's just running like tinnitus in a person's ear. That's a phantom noise.
What?
You know what I mean? But yeah, so I believe that too. I believe that our elders are around all the time, and they're there if you need them. You know, and so that voice that's with us will remain when we seem to be gone. It's really us that has to deal with when others move on, right? It's our egos that have to deal with because they're usually all good, you know.
KRS-One talks about a meditation where you, I won't explain this very well. I highly recommend everyone read Gospel of Hip Hop, KRS-One. He's written some other stuff too, but that specific one is like, dude, if the shit I'm saying right now seems foreign to you, that will bring you up to speed. Reading that book will really bring you up to speed, you know. But he talks about that sometimes that voice in our head is probably the future us. Like when you're in your now, right now, you can look back at the sort of videotapes of the past you, and you're going to feel a certain way about that. And you look back at a video of yourself from the past in your mental theater, and you see yourself doing good. You feel good now about that, and you're sort of sending a message. There's a connection there. There's a communication connection there, because as the physicists, like you mentioned, they're unraveling things about time that only our experience of it seems to be linear in one direction, but that it's not, that isn't really how it works. And so KRS, being the scholar that he is way into physics, quantum physics, and all of this stuff. And so he recommends a meditation where you intentionally in the now visualize past versions of yourself, and send messages to them. Importantly, like if you have something that went bad and you're watching videos in the mental theater of yourself when things were bad, and you maybe made a mistake or a miscalculation or disrespected somebody or something like that, disrespected yourself, the now version of yourself, you can look at yourself and be forgiving and understanding and see yourself in a perspective where I know what I didn't know then. I understand now why I made that mistake then. Or so now from here, from this future vantage point, talking to a past version of myself, I'll send forgiveness and I will send acceptance and these things, these healing energies, right? And then in a minute, that's your past already, you know, and there's this circle. So when you do that, you're actually also talking to a future version of yourself, because when the present now you feels better about the past you, the future you that now you will create in the next moment will be different and it will be better. And so once you intentionalize the cycle of that meditation and intentionally like focus on doing that, then you get into a cycle with yourself where every time you step into the next now, you're going to be getting messages from a version of yourself that's trying to guide you at that time, because you can think outside of time and project yourself in a direction that will alter your future. And I know that's a little weird.
No, it's not weird. That's what it creates intuition, and it creates at the core.
When we have a deja
vision.
Vu or intuition, yes.
That's the core of vision and intuition. You know, I follow. I pay attention. I keep my peripherals on all the time. Always keeping watch, you know, and paying attention to the downloads. You know what I mean? When we're drinking a lot and we're partying and we don't want to, you know, that's a good way to escape. That's a good way to not have to deal with what's coming at us, you know. But and for me, you know, when I'm like, oh, you know, I was never an alcoholic. I was never, you know, I guess I was a drug addict of sorts. I like to party, but I always knew I never had to go to rehab. It wasn't like that for me. Never OD'd on anything, you know. I just, you know, but you know, it's you know, in a space where clarity is king, I mean, there is no way around the spirit world. I'm like, I've, you know, personally just finally really, and I've always loved the spirit world and I'm always open to it, but more than ever before, paying full attention to it, because we are creating our realities, and those are based on intuitions that are coming from a past foundation based on how we were raised and all things around us, and in our friendships that we build. And every time something happens, every breath there's a gift, whether we open it or not, and every time one of you guys says something, it triggers some kind of memory of something that has crossed me before in one way or the other, good, bad, or indifferent. It allows me to create the next reality. So when we're living moment to moment, it's not weird at all. It's very it's just at the core of intuition. I have a tattoo on my back, which is a healing tattoo on my neck, which is a frozen water molecule, specifically based on quantum physics and how we can, in fact, create our realities by that which you just said.
Intentionalizing,
Totally.
consciously intentionalizing.
People get so out of tune, you get so stuck into, that's one of the things with like capitalism or just economic structures where you just get so stuck in a routine, and whether it's just going to work and doing the same thing for 5 to 7 days a week, and we get so locked into that, where that is the opposite of being in touch and in tune. Being in touch and in tune and aware is the opposite of like knowing where to go, like you're whether that so. Yeah. And that's something that, musicians have to do on the stage at all times. You know what I mean? Like, you have to be in tune. Like, again, I was just, recording the episode earlier today with the dancers from Arcane Artists, where they were talking about like, it's almost like telepathy, where, they're dancing. And so they're not curating the music. They're not the DJ, but they're dancing to the DJ's music. And so, the risers happen and then drops happen and everything like that. And so they almost have to have like this like language where they're just like looking at each other and like knowing, okay, this is going to be the next thing that we do. It's like this innate, like almost like telepathy. You know what I mean? And you practice that and you get better at it, because I almost feel like, at some point in our histories, maybe humans were communicating on those levels. It's just built into us.
Yeah, I mean, that's just no different than a band playing on stage. It's no different when you're with your crew on stage. There's a language that's being spoken. The music language is a thing. Like, there's a particular number of drummers that I play with, and they can see what I'm doing and can hear what I'm doing, and they know exactly what I'm going to do after that, because they've done it. They know the language. They know my body movement. They know when I'm leaning back like this, they should bring it back a little bit. If I'm starting to get like grimy, and it's like, it's like there's a language that gets spoke through body language and through the sound that comes with it. So in their case, when the music is starting to ramp up and they're just like starting to get tense and people are starting to jump around, and the girls are like, all right, something's about to happen. Let's do the move. You know what I mean, right? I'm guessing that's kind of what they're talking about. It's like they know when to do the move. Like that language is across the board. Whether you're in a business meeting or wherever else, it's like there's a flow, and you can feel it. I mean, you can look at the sound molecules. You ever see those things where you can put sand on a metal piece, and then take a saw, and it'll make the pattern right away, because it's based specifically on the exact sound that it's making, which proves that we can heal or make any kind of thing happen through the language of music based on the waves that are around us.
It's all flowing back to what Hap was talking about. It's all kind of like a ritual. Events, when you go out to a party, there's all that there's so much energy being exchanged, and that's, whether it's you're intoxicated or not, like it's just something that people aren't always picking up on until you, let's just say, become an artist and are involved with like to creating the vibrations, then you really start to get in tuned. And
it all comes down to the core of what you were saying. It's like going and networking, showing up to the show, being more than just a dope rapper. You know what I mean? Having all of those elements, at least having an understanding of those elements, and wherever your weaknesses are, make sure you got a homie around.
That's right.
You know what I mean? That's like the recipe for a long career.
We've seen those duos out there, you know what I mean? Like it was, somebody I was talking to recently was just like, when you mess up on the stage, it might've been during this podcast, but when you mess up on the stage, somebody's kind of like, oh yeah, you was with OEB.
Yeah.
Right?
It's not what happens. It's what happens and how you get out of it.
Exactly.
It's how you don't have to stick the landing. You just got to know what to do to make sure that nobody saw you didn't stick the landing.
And being in tune in that moment, you know what I mean? It's not easy to do, to be able to do, flex out and say, okay, we got to do this. Or, a lot of the times if you don't have the experience, you're just gonna, drop. It's, oh, I screwed up, But you have to move forward. You have to push past that. You have to stay in sync, because as soon as you say, "Oh, I'm done," then you're at that point no longer synced up with anything. With the audience, with the people on the stage, you're no longer synced up with it. You're like, "Oh, I'm done," and you fall and you stop. You're done.
I mean, just last night at the fair, I hit a wrong note. I was playing. I saw somebody's little kid did something funny. I was like, "Oh, cool, bam!" And I hit a wrong note, and I look over to see who noticed. You know what I mean? I just kind of looked over, and basically Ian's just like, he's just like, all right, giving me the look. And I was like, when he gave me the look, I just played the wrong note again on purpose.
I see you seeing me.
Like, bam, and then he just like looked at me again, and then it wasn't wrong anymore. Yeah. Then it was part of the song. You know what I mean? That's some Miles Davis shit right there, So it's like he gave me the look like, you fucked that up. I'm like, yeah, I'm doing it again. What's up? And then he just laughed. And then we're like, all right, let's get back into it. And then everyone knows I'm human again. It's like, yeah, we're just out here.
Yep.
Being human.
The exchange is still going on.
Yeah.
Man, this was magic. This episode was a lot of bars between what you guys were talking about. I mean, I can't believe it,
The video's gonna look good. I'm like fidgeting and knocking shit over.
No, it's because the energy's been great, man. Like you guys have brought up so many concepts that I think the musicians and artists in Humboldt County will be so thankful to hear on levels that people just don't think about. You know what I mean? We all kind of just walk through this life and we go out to shows. Some people are artists in the shows and everything like that, but tapping in at this level energetically, it's not easy to do at all. And I think it really sets people apart too. I think there's going to be a lot of people, of course in the past and, but in the future too, present and future, that they can't tap in at that level and they learn it. Just for instance, I'm just going to talk about myself, for instance, like, Mr. Swizzle was there at the one Fat Bowl Cypher where I got on the mic, and I'm not going to ever do that again. You know what I mean? You try,
That's how I feel about getting on the mic. I'll do it again because I feel obligated. It's like, well,
you run it, but no, you learn your lanes. You got to know like what's for you, what's meant for you, and you got to try. And once you do try, if I was an MC in my heart, in my in my destiny and everything like that, then hopefully after that experience, of flopping, I would not take that and just say, okay, this is obviously not for me. I would, push forward, right? If you've got that in your blood. But then there's also got to be an understanding, you know what I mean? It's so easy to get into different niches nowadays, you know what I mean? And stuff like that. You got to figure out what's for you. And when something's not for you, just admit that either maybe you're just a hobbyist or it's not for you.
Being honest with yourself when you really want something and it don't look like it's lining up, to be honest about that is difficult. It's grown-up shit right there. You know what I mean? And when you can do that well, it will increase your success because you will shift your focus to the things that you are aligned with and that are lined up for you,
Right. I would have been spinning my gears if after that time at the Fat Bowl Cypher, it's like, all right, I'm going to figure this out and do that.
But with that said, though, don't
my podcast.
Don't let them things set you back, though. With that said, once in a while, you're going to eat shit. You know what I mean? You're going to biff and have to get up and be embarrassed about it and keep it
even
pushing.
The best.
So it's just if you're really clear and really honest with yourself, you can see, look, that was a setback, but I really want this. I'm built for this. I can do it. Or you know what? I don't know. Let me focus on something that calls me louder, that calls me more clearly.
I mean, that's the most crucial thing I've learned. It's transparency and knowing when, knowing
with yourself,
and where things go wrong or where they go right. You don't need to micromanage yourself or the others around you. Really, it's really getting to know yourself. And again, being honest with yourself and your surroundings is what makes you great. It's and I have a friend who's like, whenever I say, oh man, I'm doing great, it's just only God is great. And he's not super religious either. He sees Jesus as a man who was a woodworker and just probably had his shit together. Was just super highly spiritual and like aware and awake of everyone. We were like, oh my God, this guy, So, but it's like
he was probably a rapper, yo. He was probably like in Jerusalem, like having ciphers, bro. I guarantee you, Jesus rocked ciphers. You know what I mean? Where people were just like, "Go Jesus!" Oh shit! Did you hear what he said? You know what I mean? Like, dude, Jesus was an MC for sure. For sure.
Oh, I mean, he was definitely speaking. He was definitely, So yeah.
Heck yeah.
It's important to when you think of greatness, and it's like being great. It's like doing the work that's beyond human. You know, that can separate your ego, separate your fear from the soul. You know what I mean? You can be, I could say, man, I'm fucking great, man. I'm dope. I love me. I'm amazing. You know what I mean? And why wouldn't you? You know what I mean? And this is coming from someone who's hated themselves from a long time. And we have lyrics in our songs that be like, you know, SOL, you know, I can barely stand myself, back off. You know what I mean? So we all deal with our own inner hatreds and our inner demons and our inner child, you know, that's trying to mess with us, and these entities that are all based on fear and ego. But to stand up for yourself and to protect yourself, in the words of protection, and to know that you're worthy is like 2/3 of the whole thing. So that's where a lot of that flex comes from for MCs. It's like, but you know, flex like an MC, speak like an MC, but then go act like an MC when you're not on the stage. You know what I mean? That's what I'm talking about. You know what I mean? And I don't mean that to come out any which way. I'm not an MC, so it's like I'm not like calling out MCs or DJs or anything like that. I'm just saying that generally, you know, whatever it is you're doing, if you're honest with yourself and know where you're at, you're willing to push, knowing that you're going to fall and you're going to get up and do it again anyway. I mean, it takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of eloquence and class, and it takes a lot. It takes a lot to decide, I'm a little buzzed right now. I'm on in 10 minutes. I like that moment of silence. That's a moment for people to realize, like, yo, don't forget how dope you are. Don't fuck around.
Yep. I've seen it in Humboldt County, man. People forget that a lot of the times. You know, you really have to, it's all a part of investing in yourself. That includes believing in yourself. You know what I
man.
mean?
It's a powerful and important aspect for every human to have. Is just to walk tall, you know. People are like, oh man, you're just like, you know, your chest is out, Swizz, just all this. I'm like, no, I just believe in myself, and I'm really happy with what my path is. Like, I don't have a ton of money or anything like that, you know. I've got some cool shit going on, but you know, I've made my choices and I've made my bed, and I'm sticking to that. That's because I'm honest with myself, right? So let me be that example. You know, I know that I finally reached a point where I'm honest with myself. I know who I am. I know what my place is. I'm always looking to see what other place exists. You know, we should be poking the bear. That's part of hip hop too. It's like push the envelope. If we are the result of a mother of invention, which was Kool Herc figuring out and plug the shit into the street and just boom. You know, it's like if we're a result of that, then we have to be practicing that same method moving forward as innovators and visionaries of any kind. So that's how you push the culture forward. You say that all the time, are you pushing the culture forward? So you know what I mean? Mincing words is like, okay, pissing match, great. You know, but if you did something, you did something, and it's okay to recognize those people who did something, and it's okay to recognize what may have gone wrong or gone right in those times. You know, in the shows that I've put on and the things that Oli's done, where it's been like, oh man, this was not a good idea. But you know what? That's all part of the process, and that's what builds character, and that's what builds a movement and a foundation that will last forever. Right? I have those lyrics, right? We're stronger than ever. We built a union so strong that our ties will hold together and live forever. It's now or never. Press the button, find the key, kick the door in, see how we've been. Note this, know you have to know this, and dismiss the thoughts of those you think that I diss. This music is our message. Do the session. As Garth Vader told you, those of you who have this music has a deadly weapon. And now you know who I'm repping. Hey. You claim you're a king, man. I know you're messing. Seem like a fly on the wall, yet I hold the lesson. Take a closer look and realize I am your whole collection. You know, that's some humbled hip hop, man. That's and that's not for me. That's but I wrote that and I believe that. I'm like, yo, humbled hip hop has a voice. You know, why, you know, it's like there's groups that made some noise. Potluck made some real noise. You know what I mean? The Freestyle Kings kicked the door in a different kind of way, you know, in that they, you know, having the live band hip hop and having a local hip hop group on Reggae on the Rivers stage, you know what I mean? And Potluck getting a record deal and like making some shit happen and making international connections. And you know what I mean? That's some stuff that we can all be proud of, you know what I mean? And so, it's like pushing the culture forward. if we're all playing a role and continue to put out music and continue to pay attention to our forefathers and to pay attention to the people who got us here, when you think about the Back to the Landers and the people from the 60s.
You're reading my mind
who moved
right now, bro.
The people
Yeah.
before us, Rod Deal and the Ideals.
Yes,
if anyone
sir.
of the young ones don't know who
Respect.
Rod Deal is,
Respect.
you know, speaking of the weed back in the 80s and earlier than that, these are people that did something that they believed in our generation, the 70s, 80s kids generation, were born, were the response to the Back to the Landers, speaking of also a revolution, which is hip hop.
Yeah, man. They were super hip hop. The Backlanders were super hip hop not in a music sense, but in a mindset sense. They were like, look, the land is out there. The scene that's happening in the city, they've already co-opted this revolution, and it's getting all sour and rotten from the infiltration and the manipulation of that revolution scene that was happening through the music and the culture of the San Francisco through the 60s and 70s like that. And the people who were the real ones who really wanted to get back to the elements of the earth and a simple, clean life to live in a way with integrity like that, they left the city, and that's who populated these hills, and that's who started growing all this food. The ganja was like a side thing. They came out here to grow food and to live right with their ancestors in the old way. That's what they came out here for. And to take a step out of what's happening around you and create something new, especially if you can take something that's simple and turn it into something special. That's to me, that's really the intellect of hip hop. That's that royal intellect of hip hop, is to understand your surroundings, figure out what's right and what's wrong with it, and then make alterations, sometimes in very simple but elegant ways that make big changes. And the ganja thing happened on the side. They were growing ganja because they smoked it, but they were growing cucumbers and corn because they ate it. They were trying to be self-sufficient. And that desire to be self-sufficient, again, talks back to the Panther movement and the real spiritual and cultural actual foundations that manifest in the form of the artistry, that manifest in the form of the fashion and the slang and the mindset, So shout out original Back to the Landers, because everybody out here, man, if you ever touched a penny off this ganja, then you owe everything about what you're doing to these people who took this risk to literally just go out into the forest and like settle a new land. You know what I'm saying? Like,
There were Metelians, right? There were the Metelians, which is where the Metel Center comes from. And then the Metelians, they built this building, this community center, and Carol Bruno, from my understanding, and a few others were taking showers outside in the back. You know what I mean? It was a solar shower, and they were just trying to get by. They didn't really, and then in Northern Humboldt was a lot different in that, and I just learned this story, Northern Humboldt, places like Blue Lake, Fieldbrook, that stuff was frowned upon. Dare was a big deal in the 80s, and it was, and it worked. Kids were actually narking their parents out up here in Northern Humboldt in particular. Kids were showing up to school smelling like weed, and people were getting in trouble, and people were going to jail. People who were like generations deep in Humboldt were going to jail over this shit in places like Blue Lake.
Crazy.
So all you guys who flipped your medical packs for all them years, man, and you don't know anything about those people who suffered like that to create that reality, I highly recommend to dig in and learn about the culture, because that's not just something that affected the West Coast. The entire planet was affected by those people who chose to live that way. They're the reason why ganja is legal and getting legal around the world.
Organics.
They're the reason why
organics are actually paid attention to, even though they're astronomically expensive everywhere else in the country.
Boom. Yeah.
They're
still trying to keep that down.
It's hard
I
to
know
measure.
this. I travel a lot.
Yeah.
I look for organic food. What I end up doing is just stacking up as much as I can when I leave town. Get as much as we can go, but bananas and fruit, they can only last so long. So we can get jiggy with it. We can wrap the bananas in a little bit of paper towel, and then we can take the cucumbers and wrap. We can go down that rabbit hole. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're getting there. It's going to be like that if those prices for food don't stop messing with us. So.
That's a really good insight, though, that honestly, organic cannabis, literally, like it wouldn't be what it is without those Back to Landers pushing that side of cannabis growing.
And the food, maybe more importantly, the fact that there's organic food available for people. You know, when you deal with most of the problems that people will have their families or their jobs or their lives affected by and torn apart by, most of the things that drive people to end up self-medicating with alcohol and drugs and stuff like that, most of them, according to what the world looks like to me now, that's driven by damage to our bodies from toxins. There's like organs that aren't functioning right, and there's things about our inner chemistry that are out of balance, and our mind and our body are seeking healing out here in this world. And healing, deep healing that doesn't require ongoing treatments and lots of drugs and expensive accessories isn't the focus of the healing community of our world right now. And so there isn't an incentive for those kind of people to help us really heal. You know, that's why we hack the nervous system with the music. You know, that's why we have to use the ganja the way that we do. You know what I mean? Because economically, as well as actually just physically, you know, they're just poisoning us and keeping us in a certain way. But I don't want to start digressing again. I know we've been taking up a lot of time, bro. I'm really thankful to be here. I want to make sure I say that. I'm very thankful to be invited.
The pleasure's all mine, Hab. I really appreciate you guys for this one. I mean, this was one of the best episodes we ever did, just between the history and what you guys were talking about, the concepts. This was important. This is going to be a really important one for the artists that are out here. There's some episodes that they really resonate with like the fans and everything like that. But I feel this is one where the artists really need to take heed to a lot of what was said during this episode.
Word up.
And that's not to disrespect anybody, you know, because there's a lot of
everybody's
talented
got
people.
The lane. It's a different, this was a little bit of a different conversation. You know, we definitely talked about artistry, but you know, self-care and wellness and longevity. You know, we're cats who are super healthy. You know, people don't know how old I am. You know, I wonder if people get bugged out when they find out how old I am. You know, and it's kind of funny, but it's like, you know, I have good genes, and whatever not, but. I take good care of myself. You know, I decided to lose a ton of weight one day. I just changed my whole plan, and I was eating healthy and for a long time, but really, really shifted gears. And the more I'm traveling, the more I'm touring, the more I have to be out and about, the more I have to be just loading up, and I got to stretch. You guys you'll see the videos. They're going like this, and like, you know, it's just all because I'm lifting gear. We're on tour. We're sitting in a van for hours at a time. West Coast touring isn't the same as East Coast touring. West Coast touring is hours at a time, not hour at a time. You know what I mean? Like 6 to 8 hour road trips to get to every city. And
right. And the DMV is all real kind of closer together. Yes.
Got to take care of yourself. You got to take care of yourself. I'm telling you. Until you'll last. You know, we're as old as hip hop as far as the celebration was stamped. You know what I mean? Hip hop's way older, but we're that old. You know what I mean? And how am I touring? How am I relevant? You know, it's because I'm taking care of myself. You know,
that's
right. I'm doing it, and that's important. Right. There's a time and a place to get loose, and then there's a time and a place to
be solid.
Shit together.
Yeah, that's right.
Words from the legend, Big Swizz.
Yes, I'm so blessed to have Swizz on the pod, man. I can't wait. You know, so I feel like I've heard a lot of your exploits, Hab. So I know that there's a lot more stories that you got in the clip, man. And so I kind of tell all the guests on the podcast, you know, you're always welcome to come back. So whenever you're ready, man, let's do it again.
I love it. Respect.
Heck yeah.
Appreciate you.
Well, I just real quick too, I wanted to give a quick, I wanted to basically pay the bills. I wanted to give a shout out to the sponsors. Right now we've got Garth Cultivator sponsoring the podcast. Shout out to Garth Cultivator.
What's up about it?
Heck yeah.
All right.
He just actually bought a beanie, one of the Hip Hop Humboldt beanies designed with the NAC 1 tag. And so he posted that on his social. Shout out to him for that.
Garth's important. You got to get him on I'm sure you will soon. You know, he has a lot to say and saw a lot, and he has a very different view currently on what's happened to Humboldt hip hop. You know what I mean? And I've embraced it in a different way. You know, he and I are best of friends. We have a little bit different views on the state of weed. You know, I think we all agree on what the fuck should have happened. But he is a huge force in what happened to Humboldt hip hop.
Oh yeah.
And he's releasing music, and he's out there, man. He's doing it. So it's really good to hear that he came out the other night. Like I caught wind that he was in the room, and it's like
At the Crisp,
I love hearing that, man, because Garth was a big. We go back, you know.
He's a force, like you say, because he ain't just a rapper. He ain't just a grower. He's one of them people been out here doing the thing and being, it's like he's fearlessly promoted the lifestyle and the culture. You know what I mean? The whole time. He didn't jump on that shit when it got cracking. You know what I mean? Like, nah, he helped invent the shit. He helped start the wheel rolling. You know
the Blunt Conversation video, it didn't come out till 2000. It was 4 or 5, maybe. I can't remember when it actually released, but at the end of the video is him and a couple other cats who got the butane and got the little burner outside, and they're making what would become dabs, you know what I mean? Like long before, it was 2008, 9, 10 area, and they were making their hands, they were like doing it up, you know what I mean? And I've had like, people, friends of mine who, you know, been here long before me, you know, but I'm a little bit of a voice to the crew, and just, you know, I'm a face to the Northern Humboldt kids, you know, and to at least from that hip hop group, you know, my friends up here to be like, yeah, man, you know, maybe that shit doesn't need to be in a video. You know, and it's like, nah, I feel you. I do, you know, but the, you know, MCs from the street, do you think they cared about talking about how much crack they were selling on the street? Didn't give a fuck. That's, you know what I mean? Garth was just one of those dudes who was like, no, this is my life. This is what I'm doing. Shame on y'all for holding it down, you know, for pushing it down, not holding it, you know. And my friend wasn't being a jerk at it. He was just a grower who was like, hey, man, we're trying to protect a thing here that nobody in the world should know about. You know what I mean? Like, That's really where he was coming from. And I appreciate that now looking back, you know, but it was like, you know, Humboldt kids, Northern Cali kids, people who from Oregon, you know, different parts where all the good soil is, they've known what time it is for a long, long time. You know what I mean? And now it's just like the culture's being lost. So your podcast is important. You know what I mean? Canifest is important. What people are doing and talking about, it's important to talk about this stuff because the culture of weed is getting lost. You know, when you think about the music we put out between the times of like, you know, the late 90s through 2013 or 14, 15 even, it's not the same as the songs that are being put out now. Nobody's telling stories of camp and losing all your crop and pit bulls on the fucking spot.
Most of these people don't know that reality that have migrated out here. And I wouldn't disrespect nobody for moving and following opportunity, you know what I mean? But like, yeah, as like we've been saying the whole time, it's really important to understand whose shoulders you're standing on. It's critically important to whatever your culture is. Like, you can't just stand on the uncles and the aunties and act like you built it. You know what I mean? You just can't do that.
No matter how strong you think your vision is, if you don't know where you came from, you don't know where you're going.
Pretty much.
Yeah. And at the same time, we have an opportunity to learn from the kids because that's really the best thing we can do as mentors, as busters, whatever anyone wants to call us now.
Yeah, what they call it. Yeah.
Whatever anyone thinks, you know, it's up to us to allow that to happen. And that's the biggest part is integration, you know, and it's not always important to integrate necessarily. It's just more about like when you talk about our small movement that has become something significant and is starting to really start to pop. It is good to know where it came from. And it's a pleasure to see some of like I said, some of these local MCs that grew up here, like their parents, you know, like, I mean, one of the people I'm working with on an Oakland show, her kid is like a 17-year-old MC who just went to Juice's spot for the first time. And you know what I mean? Like there's this whole thing happening, and I'm starting to realize that a lot of our friends' kids are these kids, are friends with these kids who are the next generation of Humboldt hip hop. So we have even a further obligation to stand by our cohorts in the community whose kids are the new generation of hip hop and get behind these kids and support them.
Right.
You know, so that's why for me personally, I'm like, well, I don't have children. You know, this is my babies. You know, and this is not mine, but you know what I'm saying. Like this is our shit. Yeah. This is what we believe in. I mean, obviously.
Yep.
You know, so it's important for the youth to, to understand what happened. It's the best thing that a young person could do for their career if they want to be in music, to understand their surroundings and really push it and be a force for their kin and for their cohorts, to be leaders, to help. That's how the Native community works, right? Mentors. You've got to really let that happen. It's something to be said about physical time on a planet. Even if this person right here is this far ahead of this person, there's still something to be said about time on Earth. That experience is something that everyone has to pay attention to, because you just don't know what somebody went through. Mm-hmm. No matter how big of a mouth they have or how quiet they are or how much they show up or not. You don't know what they're dealing with. So it's really important to pay attention to that. And I've gotten way better at it. I'm becoming an elder of this scene, a little bit. I'm one of the older cats now, maybe the oldest, so I pay attention to that, and I want to stay involved. I want to stay in, and back out even with the Hip Hop Congress. Like, I like being the vice president. I like being on the board. I like being part of it. I'm much more interested in seeing what others want to do and can do with this, because I feel like those skills are outside of my realm, and it allows me to become a student again, which helps me get younger.
Mm-hmm. Keeps you young.
Yeah. It's important to stay young if you want to stay relevant in this music. It's it,
Mm-hmm. Big time. No, it rolls so quick, man. It's crazy,
Faster and faster. The faster those once we get to 7 and 8G, forget about it, man. The earth is spinning faster, we're vibrating faster, we're growing faster, we're evolving faster, we're learning faster. It's all happening quickly.
Yeah. Faster and faster.
Gravity is getting easier to navigate. So, these other dimensions are getting a little easier to access.
There's a lot of changes happening. It's crazy. It's a crazy time to be alive. Not crazy, just interesting, Even just with, whether it's Humboldt County hip hop or hip hop just in general, in the breadth of time, like you guys are talking about the, 40 to 50 years of hip hop. We've seen so much transitions outside of hip hop with like technology that has changed hip hop throughout time. So there's all these different external factors too, where, you know what I mean? Like, let's just say you were, really stuck on something. Let's say you were stuck on like Sony mini discs or something, like, you're like, oh man, this is going to be the future. And you like stuck with it. And you said, you're only going to put your stuff on that. And then lo and behold, a few years pass, and then that's no longer the medium, and then you're kind of stuck.
Man, I mean, you don't even. I talk too much today. I mean,
you got all kinds of mediums.
Between my crazy loss of technology happened between '99 and 2003, because ADATs were around, and I was working on the first Triton, the first Korg Triton, and I was sequencing, but I didn't know how to sample, so I'd go to the studio. And I would transfer all the sequenced tracks onto the ADAT, but then I would have a live band come in and play over the beats that I made, and then I would track those out so that way I could take the digital sound of the beat playing, MPC style stuff, and a live band, because I represented the live music of hip hop for my crew. So I found a way to mix the live group with my Triton sounds to beef up the Triton sounds, because I didn't have the ability or the equipment to make it sound extra dope. So I would just do that, infuse that, and that technology. I mean, I started the Hip Hop Lounge in 2001, and we were playing beats, and I made sure that everyone had monitors, and the drummer had 2 monitors, because they all had to play to my beats. But then I would make the beats disappear about 16 bars into it, and the band would be playing to what I wrote, and then I would make the beat disappear, and we'd have a track.
Oh,
so that's how I dealt with
free game, kids.
Real.
That's how I dealt with not having technology.
Swizz, you can't tell them everything, bro.
But it was in like 2000, you know what I mean? It was like, but now it's like everything could, a whole show could be on a BPM. Yeah. Everything could be press a button. Mm-hmm. I went to do a gig for Tina Marie. I got an audition to do a Tina Marie show in LA. I showed up. I spent hours learning all these horn lines and all these parts and all this shit. I was up all night trying to figure this shit out, because I had like 24 hours to get the gig. I showed up and I start playing around, and the guy's just like, and I could already tell you don't have the gig. I played like 3 notes. I'm like, what do you mean? I just spent my whole night learning this shit perfectly. He goes, man, you can come up here, put your finger up your ass and press 1 note. He's like, if you're not having the stuff sequenced and all set up to her thing, then you don't have the gig. No offense. Get the fuck out of here. Boom. Mm-hmm. Talk about a real lesson. You want to get humbled. you get an engineer to look at you and be like, yeah, I don't give a fuck who you are. Get the fuck out of my studio. And I'm like, damn. And then he lights up a joint. He knew I was from Humboldt, and he was like, motherfucker, you know, I got way better weed than you anyway.
Yeah.
And I was all mad. I was like, damn, I got a real beatdown. I really felt humbled that day in a way different way, because I had been, you know, kind of on top of my music game for a minute. And I went big. I went for someone, a legend to play for. And the producer was like, you can get out of here. But at the end of that, I was walking out, and I was like, well, sorry, man. He goes, hey, stop a sec. He goes, you know, you got the look. You know, you're a good dude, your age group, man, you know, it's like, you got to go and get the disc. You got to get the sound for the track. The next time you get an audition like this, you got, so he, at the end of the day, he gave me a lesson.
Yeah, you got
he
that
gave
game.
me something. So yeah, so, you know, I'm always down to share my misfortunes, because those misfortunes are going to be someone's success. Mm-hmm. And I'm cool with that.
Mm-hmm. That's what's up.
You know,
that's the real sign of a real, you know, community leader, you know, somebody that cares enough to give themselves, you know, because you could always, you know, could be out there and just, you know, promote like, you know, just your wins. You know what I mean? But people are going to fall sometimes. And so
people commit suicide when they can't talk about their negative shit, which is the problem with social media. Everyone's out there all looking good, all feeling great all the time, and then pissed off and punching walls when no one's looking. Right. You know what? When I have a bad day, I get up and usually say that shit if I'm in that mood. Sometimes I get on a soapbox and I'll say, fuck this shit. You know what I mean? And it keeps me sane. It keeps me from wanting to off myself. You know what I mean? Like straight up. You know, I have anxieties. I deal with this stuff, and I'm never gonna, you know, end my life. You know, I know better at this point. But at the same time, being real with yourself is extremely important. And people spend a lot of time acting and doing all image and all ego, and it's all fear based. And it's okay to be human. And you know, I feel like I get respected more by being honest with myself and the people around me. I'm not afraid to call you out on your shit. And if I'm wrong about that, I'm not afraid to hear it. And I think that goes a long way. There's a lot of character in that. And I learned that through failures of my own. And if I ever call anyone out or say some shit, it's probably because I've been in that position before. I'm not just going to call you out on some shit because I'm better than you. I'm calling you out on some shit because I know for sure that you're going to end up getting hurt if you do this, because I did it. And it didn't feel that good. And after the third time I did it, I knew for sure it didn't feel good. So now I'm fucking saying something.
Right.
You know, I'm really out here for a bigger purpose. You know what I mean? I think that's part of the hip hop, is like getting our voices out there is great for ourselves. It's better for the people who learn a lesson from that. Well, how many MCs have you talked to that said, man, I got a letter from this kid who decided not to off himself because of my lyrics?
Mm-hmm. Right.
I've heard numbers of people say that. So I'm always proud of someone who says something that isn't comfortable.
Had people
because somebody else is.
I'm in jail. I'm listening to your record, bro. You saving my life. You know what I mean? Like, you can't buy that. You know what I mean? You can't design that or fabricate that for your socials. You know what I'm saying? You have to suffer something to be able to share something like that. You know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you have to remain human. So, you know, it's like, it's important to recognize that we are all in pain on some level. We're all dealing with adversity. We're all dealing with a sick sibling or mom or partner, or we're all dealing with something, you know? So I think it's like, you know, yeah, you hit me when you said that. And I was like, oh yeah, no. People off themselves when they're not able to feel free to speak. If you can't speak out and you can't express yourself, you're just getting bottled up more and more and more. And sometimes those voices will overtake you. You know what I mean? And yeah.
And it all just goes back to just, we all deserve that outlet for our energies. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. You know. And
having the nerve to go to the show. Maybe we ended on that, right? Having the nerve to show up and network, because even though it's scary, even though you may feel a certain way, once you walk in the room and you realize how many people are excited to see you there, it all melts away. It just takes, you just have to have the guts to walk through the door.
We're making a magic thing every time. And if you don't come in the room and be present with your energy, you're not involved in the magic. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
even if you're a fan, even if you love my music, like if you don't come in there with us during the ceremony, like, you know, we all need to be in the room there together like that.
We're missing out on your magic when that happens too.
Right.
Let's give it back to those of us who don't go out as much as we should, or don't want to show up because you're nervous or aren't really sure. Like, those people are missing out on your energy when you decide not to show up.
That's right.
So it's okay. It's okay to feel nervous. It's okay to feel that way. Showing up sometimes keeps people alive another day. So that's what gets me. That's why I still do robe reports. I don't do them as much anymore, but I'm like, every now and then it's like, we doing a robe report there? I wouldn't mind, smoke sesh with Swizz. You know what I mean? It's like, I need to do that. Like, I feel like I need to do that. I feel absolutely obligated when someone has, and I try my best to do it when someone's reaching out, because that you never know when that person's really reaching out. Mm-hmm. I have a friend who didn't respond to someone who was really reaching out, and that dude was dead the next day. So I do my very best that when someone says something a little off, a little sideways, or a little hope that you're going to be around, those are good messages to listen to, because those people might be hurting. Mm-hmm. And if you don't feel like you should say something, that's okay. Maybe just show up.
Right.
And don't say something.
You don't have to say the
just
perfect thing.
Just being there is like, wow. And I've learned that. I've learned that from a professor up at HSU, or Cal Poly. It was like, oh man, you don't even know, what you and your crew have done for some of my students. It's all about NAC and the Fat Bowl Cypher and the space that Noonan and I have put together for people, and you know what I mean. And it's like, damn, we have to continue doing this. We have to keep showing up. We have to keep going to the Crisp Sound. We have to make Louis pop. We have to be able to show up at the farmers markets and the Friday night markets, and we have to be able to have the Kidlandia at the Summer Arts, because hip hop is everywhere, and it's like becoming a brighter and brighter light for people. And we can make we're making real change. Real change is happening. Shit, Master P and Snoop Dogg speaking of food, they're making cereal. That's what they're doing. They're making cereal that's owned by them and put out for kids, and it's making a dent.
Yeah.
It's
all about, hip hop is this interesting art form where there's going to be people that take to it, but then there's also going to be the people that don't. And so we're not ever going to reach that full penetration into those groups. But you know what I mean? Just having hip hop have more of a presence to where can even be enjoyed by more people is progress for the culture,
Totally.
And I'm just thankful for Humboldt County Humboldt County business owners, venues that have, open, and like you're just talking about the Crisp Lounge, Louis, you know what I mean, the Epitome Gallery, the few places that I don't want to say few, because I hope it's more than few. I don't want to downplay it. The places that are open to Humboldt County hip hop. We need more of you out there. You know what I mean? Because it's a beautiful scene. There's a lot of good things going on. It's not just what you've seen on the radio, like you were talking about. There's this image that's put out for hip hop. You know what I mean? And so there's none of that really happening in Humboldt County. You know what I mean? It's not like that. People may be clicked up, but it's still not this real warfare mentality. There's nothing like that at all.
No, it's just hungry people excited about doing their shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that is what it is. What's next is us, getting a hold of the North Coast Journal and the Times Standard and having them add best hip hop groups and add to the best of, finding ways for hip hop to be in those, right? We've already succeeded by getting the original band separated from the cover band. You know what I mean? Now it's time to get best MC, best rap group, maybe there's an awards show that we're starting. Maybe we need to call Oli and OEB. You guys listening?
Hey, my last visit out here, we was talking about a Diamondback reunion show the last time I was out here, bro. We were floating.
You texted me, so I missed out on that breakfast. I'm actually mad at myself because I couldn't get there, and I was like, man, I missed a round.
Me and Oli P and OEB sat down and broke bread, and by the end of the thing, we was talking about, oh shit, maybe we could do this. You know what I mean? Like,
Well, I
It
mean,
will
if we
blow
all got
up.
these
Oh,
groups
yeah.
together, you got James and you got OEB and Diamondback and Fatbull and you and the Hip Hop Humble conglomerate put together for a day with Redwood Acres again. I mean, he pulled it off with Kid Rock. You know what I mean? He pulled that
yeah,
shit
man.
off.
He's made some miracles. Shout out Ole P. There's no humble hip hop without Ole P.
That's facts right there.
Yeah, he really carried.
And
carried
Big
the
Daddy
torch.
too.
Yeah, Big Daddy.
Big
too.
Daddy was a big force. He put
Yeah.
on shows constantly at the Red Fox. He and I built a really strong friendship based on that. And
He be
I mean,
driving
he's-
around in his Cutlass or whatever it was with the shit all across the back all the time. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh,
He's
yeah.
too
I
straight.
seen
Put a
it.
Fatbull logo on his body.
Yeah.
Oh,
Big Daddy did?
He's got Fatbull
That's
tatted
what's
up.
up.
Oh, respect.
I love
forever
Brian,
for him,
man.
Brian, yeah.
And I know we did give respect, but I wanted to close on giving respect to Thick Man.
Yeah, big up, thick man.
Yeah, because he
Thick
did a
Man.
lot out here too. You know, that's Big Daddy's brother.
Yep.
You know.
Yeah.
Yep. Respect.
It was a big
Yeah.
crew. There was, you think about all these different crews that were really just keeping it going around here.
That Star Music.
that.
You know. Yeah. Well, fellas, I really appreciate your time. We took this from daylight to almost dusk here. You know what I mean? It was great, though. I think that the audience, the community is going to love it. I'm thankful
so.
for you guys' time. I'm, like I said, I'm always going to be, this podcast is always going to be here for when you're ready to come back.
Word up.
It's going to be, the next one. Maybe we get Oli or Garth or, have a nice
both
mix.
of them guys got to get in here.
Now, that would be a crazy one.
I mean, together, separate, whatever we need their stories. Yeah.
Heck yeah.
H is up, brother. Appreciate you.
That's
Thank
it.
you.
Thanks, fellas. Have a good rest of your evening. Thanks,
All right,
y'all.
peace.